Imagine for a moment that you've just received devastating news: a sudden job loss, a painful relationship breakup, or a serious health diagnosis. The immediate reaction is often one of shock, stress, and intense anxiety, isn't it? But what if the way we've been conditioned to respond to these inevitable hardships is not only ineffective, but also the primary source of our deepest suffering? What if what we have been taught is a trap that keeps us constantly agitated? It is this very question that we will explore in this video, challenging the conventional wisdom on how we react to difficult situations, and immediately introducing an alternative way of understanding. What if the art of not giving a FCK wasn't about apathetic indifference, but about consciously choosing where we focus our limited time and energy? What if true power lies not in reacting to every external event, but in strategically directing our attention to what genuinely aligns with our values, and learning to ignore the rest? We are constantly being bombarded by external forces attempting to control our emotions. But what if we do not have to accept this control? What if we are free to choose? This is the counter-narrative to apathy that we will be exploring, a path that leads to a greater sense of peace and control. The core of this new understanding rests on the duality between internal control and external influence. Our modern society seems to be fixated on external achievements and the opinions of others, which are forces beyond our direct control. This obsession is a constant source of anxiety, whereas true freedom and contentment come from a deep focus on our inner world and what we can control. By learning this subtle but critical distinction, we can create the inner conditions for peace and happiness. This foundational principle is key to how we will approach every issue moving forward, and it provides a new mental model that challenges our everyday assumptions. But this is not a new idea. For a man of immense power, a Roman emperor who lived nearly 2,000 years ago also struggled with these exact same issues. This is where our journey begins, with Marcus Aurelius, not only as a great leader, but also as an unconventional source of wisdom, who embodied a different understanding of not giving a FCK. He is a historical guide who will lead us through these complex ideas and show us that they are applicable to our modern lives. This is not just an academic exercise in abstract philosophical ideas. This is a practical guide to living a better life. It's an opportunity to fundamentally shift the way you perceive the world and how you choose to respond to the challenges you face every single day. From the smallest frustrations to the largest of setbacks, the knowledge and tools you will gain from this video will provide you with a completely different way of relating to and understanding your own experiences and the world at large. By the end of this video, you will have actionable steps to put into practice, and these practical tools are rooted in a deeper understanding of the human condition. Imagine how drastically you could reduce your stress, anxiety, and overall dissatisfaction by learning to manage your focus and attention. Most people are constantly at the mercy of external events, reacting to every minor issue and losing their peace of mind in the process. What if we could reclaim our attention and energy, focusing only on that which is truly important? This is about gaining control over what truly matters to you and rejecting the chaotic influence of unwanted external pressures. We are constantly being pulled in all directions. However, we can reclaim our autonomy and start focusing on our inner world by choosing a set of values and goals that align with our true self. This understanding will not only transform how you react to the world around you, but also revolutionize your understanding of your own emotional reactions. You may have been taught that emotions are out of your control and that you are at the mercy of what life throws at you. But what if this was a false understanding? What if you could learn to consciously influence your emotional state? By the end of this video, you will move from being a victim of your environment to becoming an active agent in your own life. This is not simply a new way to think about things. This is a revolution in how we can start to manage our own inner world. We will explore the heart of Stoicism, not as some dusty, old philosophical concept, but as a practical toolkit that we can use to improve our daily lives. It will not be a list of do's and don'ts, but a method to approach the problems of modern life. This video will teach you practical strategies for achieving a life of virtue and peace in a world that often feels overwhelmingly chaotic. Stoicism is a practice that requires dedication and consistent self-reflection, and this will become more clear as we progress through this journey of discovery. Marcus Aurelius was not just a powerful Roman emperor. He was also a seeker of wisdom and inner peace. The most personal and private thoughts of his inner life were recorded in his diary known as Meditations. And this is why he is an invaluable guide. His struggles and insights into life are extremely relevant for all of us, and in this video, you will discover why. He is not a detached god-like figure. He was a man who faced very real and challenging issues, which is why his advice is so powerful and surprisingly applicable to all of our daily experiences. At the core of Stoic philosophy lies the concept of the dichotomy of control, which is an understanding of the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. What is in our control are our thoughts and actions, and what is not in our control are external events and other people's opinions. This foundational principle is a necessary tool to help us understand how to focus our energy and what to completely disregard. It also helps us understand the true source of our suffering and how we can move toward greater peace and happiness. It's the ability to discern what is truly up to us and what is not that provides the path towards freedom from suffering. And it's not the events themselves that are the cause of our suffering, but rather it is our interpretations and judgments of those events. This is where the real power lies, in the choices we make about what we value and what we choose to ignore. We do not have to passively accept every emotional cue that we receive from the world around us, but we can start actively choosing what we will focus on and what is worthy of our attention. This understanding creates a foundation for personal responsibility, and by taking responsibility for our own interpretations of the world, we then become more empowered. We can start to change our inner world, which then influences the outer world. External reality does not hold power over us unless we allow it to. We can, however, use our inner world to change our outer world by choosing our focus and attention and recognizing the erroneous nature of many of our judgments. By learning to correct those errors, we can start to reduce a lot of our suffering. The way to a more peaceful life is therefore an inside job, and it starts with a deeper understanding of ourselves and our connection to the world. Think back to the last time you reacted negatively to a situation and ask yourself, was your reaction truly helpful? Was the resulting emotional turmoil really worth it? Or did that reaction just fuel the flames of further negative emotions and steal your inner peace? If you can be honest with yourself, you might see that many of your reactions do not serve you and lead to greater suffering. It's important to start asking ourselves these questions in order to start to change our responses. So how did Marcus Aurelius, a man of great power, implement these Stoic principles in his own life, especially in the face of tremendous adversity? And what does this have to do with not giving a FCK? The true understanding of this phrase is much deeper than it seems, and it's definitely not about indifference. It is a subtle art of choosing where to place your focus, your time, and your energy. This art can be cultivated and refined, and this will be a focus point for the rest of this video. We will explore specific techniques and practices that will help you start intentionally selecting your values and directing your attention to what matters most. We will delve deep into the practical benefits of not passively reacting to external cues and instead start actively shaping our responses based on our chosen values. How do we actually choose what matters, and how do we discard what does not? This is the journey that we will now embark on. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you will discover the true meaning of not giving a FCK and how this ancient wisdom can transform your modern existence. The path to a more intentional, peaceful, and fulfilling life starts with a deeper understanding of the core principles of Stoic philosophy. and a willingness to explore a new way of relating to the world. This is the core of our journey together, and we are just getting started. So let us delve deeper into the philosophical framework that underpins this transformative understanding of how we can better relate to the world. We touched on the dichotomy of control, but now it's time to truly unpack its power. What does it mean in practical terms to understand the difference between what you can control and what you cannot? Consider the most common frustrations you encounter in your day: a traffic jam, a delayed flight, or a critical comment from a colleague. These events in themselves are beyond your influence. You cannot directly change the traffic patterns, the airline schedule, or another person's words. But where your power truly lies is in your reaction to these events. Do you allow these external factors to dictate your mood and actions, or do you consciously choose how you will respond? The key is to understand that your emotional state is within your control, and this power is what we will explore throughout the rest of this video. By recognizing this distinction, you can start to strategically redirect your energy and start to consciously choose your responses, instead of being at the mercy of external forces. Focusing on what is outside of your influence only amplifies negative emotions, creating a cycle of frustration and anxiety, and this is a cycle we can choose to interrupt. Now, let's examine the nature of our judgments, for this is the gateway into understanding the true source of our suffering. Stoics believe that our emotional responses are not dictated by events themselves, but by our judgments about those events, which they called impressions. An event, in its essence, is neutral. It is neither good nor bad until we apply our own interpretation to it. Think of receiving criticism. One person might interpret it as a personal attack, feeling anger and resentment, while another might view it as valuable feedback, an opportunity for self-improvement. The actual event, the criticism, is the same. It's the judgment of the criticism that leads to vastly different emotional outcomes. Another example could be that of experiencing what some may call bad luck. If you view yourself as a victim of the universe, you will feel victimized. If you view the same set of events as a challenging learning experience, your emotional response will be drastically different. This is why understanding how we create our own emotional realities is a crucial step in breaking free of the suffering caused by negative judgments and emotional reactions. We create our own reality through our own perceptions, and that is why we must understand this inner space so well. Marcus Aurelius himself, a man of immense power and responsibility, also struggled with the same inner conflicts. He did not live in a vacuum and had to deal with many complex and challenging situations every single day, which he recorded in meditations. He employed a daily practice of reflection and self-inquiry, using these very principles that we are exploring. He examined his own anger, frustration, and temptations, always returning to the dichotomy of control. He questioned himself constantly, asking, "Is this within my power, or is it outside of my control?" He would journal, analyze his thoughts, and apply these principles to his daily life, not as some abstract theory, but as a concrete tool for self-management. This is a clear demonstration that Stoicism is not a detached philosophy, but a powerful practice that even a Roman emperor relied upon. Marcus was not an untouchable God figure. He was a man who struggled just like you, which is why his reflections are so powerful and so applicable to modern life. He used this understanding to better manage his own responses and emotions, and we can learn to do this as well. Perhaps one of the biggest problems that we face in modern life is our misplaced focus. We worry about the opinions of others, we dwell on past mistakes, and we become anxious about the future, all of which are beyond our control. How much time is wasted on social media, seeking approval, or comparing ourselves to others, all of which leads to greater feelings of inadequacy? What about the mental strain of replaying past arguments or obsessing about potential failures in the future? These are all a constant drain on your emotional energy. All of these misplaced thoughts are a perfect example of where we lack self-awareness and discipline, which are both core values of Stoicism. Our suffering is not caused by these external factors themselves, but by the way that we choose to interpret and interact with them. This constant focus on what we cannot influence is a recipe for emotional turmoil, and it is crucial to recognize these patterns so that we can start to break free. This understanding is the gateway to a completely different approach to life and allows us to intentionally direct our focus. But what if we could shift our focus and break free of this negative cycle? What if true freedom was not about controlling the external world, but about managing our inner world? This brings us to the core of the argument. True freedom lies in accepting what we cannot control and focusing our energy on what we can. It is a strategic choice to reallocate our resources to those areas where we can create a positive impact. This is not about resignation or apathy, but about intelligently directing our energy and recognizing the limits of our influence. This understanding will then free you to take meaningful action and allow you to step away from the frustrating, chaotic patterns that rob you of your inner peace. By focusing on what is within your sphere of control, you are no longer at the mercy of the chaotic nature of the external world. This shift is a reorientation of our perspective and allows us to start taking ownership over our inner space. Stoicism also emphasizes that inner virtue is the only true source of fulfillment, and not external achievements or material goods. This goes directly against the messages that we receive in our modern world, which tells us that success is only related to money, status, or popularity. But what if these things are not the true measure of a life well lived? Stoics focused on the cultivation of inner wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, believing that these virtues are the ultimate source of happiness and contentment. Imagine a successful CEO who, despite achieving great financial success and external validation, still feels empty and unfulfilled. Now, consider a person who leads a simple life of integrity, kindness, and wisdom. Which of these two people do you think will have greater peace and joy? Stoicism teaches that true fulfillment is not about what you have, but about who you are. The relentless pursuit of external achievements is a never-ending cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. It is only through a deep focus on inner virtue that we can begin to create the internal conditions for lasting peace and happiness. Marcus Aurelius constantly emphasized this point in his meditations, reminding himself that external possessions, fame, and power are all fleeting and ultimately meaningless. He saw his own thoughts, fears, and weaknesses not as something to avoid, but as an opportunity to practice self-awareness and work towards the development of his character. He viewed his position as emperor as a responsibility to be fulfilled with virtue and wisdom, and not as a means to personal glory. The key to understanding his life is that he used his own internal struggles to explore these deeper questions of existence, always returning to his core values. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote demonstrates that the true source of power is always within and not without. He demonstrated a deep level of self-honesty and never shied away from observing his own internal weaknesses, but instead used them to refine his own internal character. At this point, some may argue that Stoicism is just a form of apathy or indifference, but this is far from the truth. Stoic acceptance is not about ignoring injustice or turning a blind eye to suffering. It is about responding to it in a virtuous and constructive manner. It's a call to action, but not mindless action that is based on emotional reactivity. It's a call to calculated and reasoned action that is grounded in virtue and wisdom. For example, if you are faced with a social problem or a clear injustice, a Stoic approach is to analyze the situation, discern where you can influence change, and then act with courage and integrity, but never out of a place of emotional reactivity. If the issue is outside of your influence, you are asked to accept it and to let it go, so that you do not waste valuable energy on futile attempts to change things that are outside of your control. This ability to discern where your actions will be most effective is a key element of Stoic thinking and a primary value of this approach to life. This ability is what separates true strength and wisdom from a mindless reactivity and emotional turbulence. So how can we implement these ideas in our daily lives? We will now explore the practical tools that will help you apply these Stoic principles to modern challenges. One of the most powerful techniques is negative visualization, which, despite its name, is not about being pessimistic. It is about appreciating what we have by contemplating the possibility of losing it. Imagine that you have lost your job or that you have a serious health diagnosis. By premeditating on these types of events, you can cultivate a sense of gratitude for what you have and also develop mental resilience, preparing yourself for adversity should it ever arise. This practice helps you to avoid over-attachment to external possessions and outcomes, and also creates a kind of psychological armor, preparing you for the challenges of life. It helps you to become grateful for your current situation, which then reduces the likelihood of overreacting if your circumstances ever change. This is a very powerful tool that prepares you for both joy and suffering. Another powerful tool in the Stoic toolkit is journaling and self-reflection. Marcus Aurelius used this practice daily, recording his thoughts, emotions, and actions in meditations, always with the intention of self-improvement. By writing down your thoughts, you can analyze them more objectively, identifying recurring patterns and self-defeating tendencies, which allows you to step out of the fog of your unconscious patterns, which is often the source of much suffering. By creating a structure for these daily reflections, you can make sure that your journaling is as effective as possible. You can track your progress, analyze your emotional reactions, and refine your responses. This daily analysis will give you clear insights into your own values, goals, and intentions, and will be a guide in directing you to live a more intentional and meaningful life. By reflecting on our thoughts and emotions, we can identify where we are being dragged into reactivity, and then consciously choose a different response. Mindful presence is another tool that is crucial for cultivating peace and understanding. Stoicism teaches us that the only thing that truly exists is the present moment, and by focusing on the present, we can reduce anxiety about the future and the pain caused by dwelling on the past. Bring your awareness to your own body, perhaps to the feeling of your feet on the ground or the sensation of the air entering your lungs. Simple practices like this bring you back to the present moment, which helps you to release the grip of anxiety and stress. Many of our negative emotions are linked to the past, and others are directed toward the future. By focusing on the present, we are able to reduce the influence of these negative emotions and redirect our attention to the now. It is in this moment that we have the power to take constructive action and make a conscious choice. By combining these practical techniques with a deep understanding of our own values, we can begin to intentionally live our lives. This is where the true art of not giving a FCK comes into play. It is not about apathy or indifference, but about carefully selecting where to place your focus, your energy, and your attention, and strategically discarding the rest. It's a deliberate choice to align your actions with your core values, rather than being guided by automatic emotional reactions or the expectations of others. What are your core values, and what do they mean to you? Do you value honesty, integrity, creativity, or kindness? By identifying these core values, you can start to use them as a filter to discard anything that does not align with your selected principles. And what happens when you start to discard the actions, thoughts, and behaviors that do not align with your selected values? You free yourself to live a more meaningful and intentional life, and this is the path to a more fulfilling existence. This ability to choose what is important is the power of not giving a FCK, and this will be the main focus of our next section. Now, let's turn our attention to the modern world and how our current environment often exacerbates these challenges, keeping us trapped in patterns of dissatisfaction. We live in an age where external validation is not just a desire, but a driving force that shapes our lives. Social media platforms are designed to keep us hooked, creating a constant need for likes, followers, and positive feedback. Material possessions are advertised as the key to happiness, leading us to believe that if we just buy the right car, the right clothes, or the latest gadget, then we will finally be content. The pursuit of status becomes a never-ending quest for recognition, tying our self-worth to external factors that are often fleeting and beyond our control. This relentless cycle of chasing external validation creates a fragility in our emotional state, as it is always dependent on factors outside of ourselves. Think about the person who posts a picture on social media, eagerly awaiting the validation of likes and comments. Their mood can shift dramatically depending on the external response, highlighting just how much their emotional well-being is tied to something that they cannot control. Compare this to the person who is focused on their work, finding meaning in the process itself, rather than seeking external approval. They have a sense of inner peace, as they are not reliant on others to validate their worth, which is instead tied to their chosen values. This contrast illuminates how the modern world can create a prison of external dependence, leading to unnecessary stress and anxiety as we continuously seek external markers of approval, while neglecting our internal world. The technology that we are so dependent on creates a series of traps that lure us away from the space where we can make a difference, and instead direct us to an area of constant feedback loops, which can be emotionally draining and even addictive. These traps include social media, targeted advertising, and the endless stream of notifications, all designed to capture our attention and hold it captive. They distract us from the present moment and pull us into a world of illusionary control, where our happiness is always dependent on something that is outside of our influence. We often believe that if we can just attain the next milestone, then we will finally be happy. But what if happiness is not about these external achievements, but about something more profound? This also leads us to the modern illusion that we have more control than we actually do. We often find ourselves trying to control things that are simply beyond our grasp. We worry about other people's opinions, we try to predict the future, and we become frustrated when things don't go our way. How much energy is wasted in attempting to manage a loved one's behavior, or trying to force outcomes that are not within our power? We live in a state of constant anxiety about the future, a future that we can neither see nor control, leading us to live in a state of perpetual fear and uncertainty. Consider the person who is constantly worried about the economy, becoming anxious about potential financial difficulties. This worry will not change the state of the economy, but it will most definitely impact that person's internal state, creating constant stress and preventing them from taking action in their area of influence. Think of a person who is upset about a decision that their boss has made. They expend valuable emotional energy dwelling on a choice they cannot influence, rather than focusing on the task at hand, or even searching for a new job if the situation is intolerable. All of these examples show how attempting to control the uncontrollable leads to a deep sense of frustration, which is completely counterproductive and prevents us from making any meaningful impact in our own lives. What's important to remember is that the external event itself is not the cause of our suffering, but rather our internal judgment and interpretation of that event, which often leads us to desperately try to control an area where we have no influence. The problem is not the job loss, it is our judgment about the job loss. The problem is not the traffic jam, but our judgment about the traffic jam. This inability to discern what is, and is not, within our influence is a crucial obstacle to overcome if we are to live a life of peace and meaning. We must be able to see that the external circumstances are not the true source of our frustration, and instead turn our attention inwards. The role of modern technology in amplifying this misplaced focus cannot be overstated. Social media platforms use sophisticated algorithms that are designed to capture our attention and hold it captive, creating constant feedback loops that exploit our emotions and values. These platforms provide a distorted view of reality, where carefully curated images create the illusion of perfect lives, leading us to compare ourselves to unrealistic standards. The constant stream of notifications and the endless scroll of content contribute to a sense of overwhelm, distracting us from the present moment and making it harder to concentrate on what is truly important. These tools, that are designed to connect us, can often lead us to feelings of isolation and anxiety. It is as if we are being constantly bombarded with stimuli, making it increasingly difficult to disengage and reflect on our own values and inner world. Think about the way that these platforms reward instant gratification, providing constant hits of dopamine that keep us coming back for more. This creates an unhealthy cycle of addiction where we are constantly seeking the next dopamine hit, while ignoring the aspects of our life that provide true meaning and purpose. The same technology that promises connection and information can also become a tool of control, directing our focus away from our sphere of influence and towards external factors that keep us tethered to a constant stream of information, which is often designed to exploit our values and emotions. It is in this space of constant distraction that we often lose sight of ourselves and our own core values, and instead fall into the trap of seeking external validation and trying to control things that are completely outside of our power. We must become aware of these patterns and begin to consciously disengage from the technology when it becomes detrimental to our well-being. Otherwise, we risk becoming a slave to the very tools that were designed to set us free. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that applying Stoic principles in our modern world is not an easy task, and it requires ongoing effort and self-awareness. This is not a one-time fix, but a continuous practice of choosing our responses and directing our attention in an intentional manner. We often fall back into old habits and emotional reactions, and the journey towards self-mastery can be a difficult and frustrating process. It is important to remember that it is okay to make mistakes and that the process of growth is iterative. We might strive to implement these principles one day and then find that we are overwhelmed by old patterns the next. This is not an indication of failure, but rather a natural part of the process of growth. Consider the scenario where a person is trying to remain calm in a stressful work environment, but then suddenly snaps at a colleague, falling back into an old pattern of emotional reactivity. This does not mean that all of their effort was for nothing. Instead, it highlights that the path towards self-mastery is an ongoing process, one that requires self-compassion, forgiveness, and consistent effort. We should not be discouraged by these failures, but rather learn from them and use them as an opportunity to improve our approach to the challenges of our daily lives. It is the process, not perfection, that leads to lasting change. The practice of Stoicism is not a destination, but a continuous journey that we are all on, and every challenge that we face is another opportunity to grow and to refine our ability to respond in a more thoughtful and purposeful way. Each time we fall down, we are also provided with the opportunity to get back up and to continue moving forward. Another challenge that we face is overcoming our deeply ingrained habits and emotional reactions. Our brains are wired to create patterns of behavior that become automatic over time, and our emotional responses can often override our reason, making it difficult to make a conscious change. These patterns are often so deeply rooted that we respond in an automatic fashion without even realizing that we have a choice. Stoicism speaks of these as impressions, which are the initial perceptions and judgments that trigger our emotional responses. The challenge is to interrupt these patterns and choose a different response. Think about the habit of checking your phone every time you feel bored, or reacting with anger when someone cuts you off in traffic. These are examples of deeply ingrained habits that are difficult to break. The emotional reactions are often so immediate and automatic that we often feel powerless to change them. It is when we find ourselves in this automatic pattern that we must use our own self-awareness to see when we are being pulled into reactivity and consciously interrupt that cycle. This requires intention, self-awareness, and a clear plan of action. We need to identify the triggers that set us off, and then create strategies to respond more effectively and create a new habit that aligns with our values. This process requires us to take a long, hard look at our deeply ingrained behaviors and to consciously create new patterns instead of continuing on the same destructive paths. Furthermore, we must also acknowledge the crucial role of self-compassion in this process of self-improvement. It's important that we do not fall into the trap of self-criticism, which often leads to frustration and discouragement. We must learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend who is going through a difficult time. Self-compassion is not about excusing our mistakes, but about acknowledging our imperfections and understanding that we are all works in progress. It's a vital counterbalance to the harshness of self-criticism, which can often hinder our progress and prevent us from moving forward. When we are too critical of ourselves, we often fall into a cycle of shame and self-doubt, which only serves to amplify the negative emotions that we are trying to overcome. Think of the person who berates themselves after making a mistake, creating an inner monologue of self-condemnation. This internal criticism will not make them more likely to succeed in the future, but will instead create an emotional state that makes them more likely to fail. Self-compassion, on the other hand, allows us to acknowledge our shortcomings, learn from them, and move forward with a renewed sense of hope and determination. It is by being kind to ourselves that we create the internal conditions for positive growth. And when we falter, as we inevitably will, self-compassion will provide the support that we need to continue on our path. Let us now return to the idea of intentional value selection, for this is a tool that is essential in directing our energy towards the areas that truly matter. Clarifying your personal values is a powerful way to make better decisions, as it provides an internal compass, guiding you towards actions that align with what is most important to you. What do you truly value in life? Is it creativity, honesty, family, or perhaps service to others? By identifying your core values, you can use them as a filter, allowing you to discard anything that does not align with your chosen principles. Imagine a scenario where two people are given the same opportunity, but they have different values. The first person values wealth, while the second values community service. Their decisions will differ greatly, as they are driven by different internal values. This example demonstrates how having clear values not only helps guide our choices, but also increases confidence, as they are derived from something that we deeply value. This process is not about following a rigid set of rules, but about creating a framework that will guide us towards choices that are rooted in purpose and meaning, and in line with our own selected values. When you live a life aligned with your values, it is easier to say no to the things that distract you from the path that you want to follow. This leads us to the practical application of selective attention, which requires that we actively filter out distractions and intentionally focus our energy on our chosen values. This is not passive acceptance, but an active and conscious selection of where we direct our attention and resources. What happens when you are faced with workplace drama? Do you join in, allowing yourself to be sucked into a whirlpool of gossip and negativity? Or do you consciously choose not to engage, redirecting your attention to more meaningful actions? The second option requires an active effort, a conscious choice to disengage from the distraction and to focus instead on your work and personal values. This is the power of not giving a FCK, as a conscious tool to protect your energy and resources from being squandered on things that are not aligned with what truly matters to you. By disengaging from the chaos of external events, we are better equipped to focus on the things that are within our influence and contribute to a more productive and meaningful existence. The more clearly we define our values, the more powerful this ability to consciously choose where to focus our attention becomes. Finally, we must also understand the importance of purpose as the guiding force that anchors our values and makes the challenges of Stoic practice easier to manage. When we have a clear sense of purpose, we are far more likely to persevere through difficult times, and our challenges become opportunities for growth rather than reasons for despair. This sense of purpose provides us with a larger framework, one that gives our actions meaning and direction. Consider a person who has a strong sense of purpose in helping others. They are far more likely to overcome setbacks and challenges as they are anchored to a larger value. Now compare that to someone who lacks a sense of purpose. They are likely to become easily discouraged by the slightest difficulty as they have no clear goal to orient their actions. The difference between these two people lies in the connection to something larger than themselves, and that this connection makes all the difference. Our purpose, whether it's grand or simple, helps us to transform even the most mundane tasks into something meaningful, and in doing so, it enriches our lives with greater levels of contentment and fulfillment. This purpose does not have to be some grand, life-changing project. It can be simply living with kindness, honesty, and integrity. It is this ability to connect our chosen values to a larger sense of purpose that will carry us through even the most difficult periods. Understanding the dichotomy of control, the nature of judgment, and the power of value selection transforms challenges from obstacles to opportunities for growth. And it is this shift that allows us to fully understand the power of not giving a FCK. Stoicism is not about avoiding challenges, but about learning how to engage with them in a productive and virtuous manner, using them as opportunities to grow, learn, and to become more resilient. Instead of viewing a job loss as a failure, we can see it as a chance to change our direction and to pursue new opportunities. Instead of viewing a difficult relationship as a source of pain, we can see it as a way to develop greater patience, understanding, and compassion. By shifting our perspective, we are able to transform problems into stepping stones, which is the true power of this understanding. Consider our earlier example of losing a job. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, what if that challenge could be transformed into an opportunity? This is the power of Stoicism, as it allows us to look at all problems through the lens of growth and to find meaning even in the most difficult times. The journey toward freedom and inner peace is not easy, but it is accessible to everyone. This is a journey of learning, growing, and refining our values and perspectives, and it requires constant effort, self-awareness, and self-compassion. The daily practice of journaling, reflection, and mindfulness can seem difficult, but over time, it will bring about a profound transformation. We must be willing to show up every day and to commit to this practice, and in doing so, we will find that our lives become increasingly more intentional, aligned with our values, and filled with meaning and purpose. This is not a sprint, but a marathon, and that small, consistent effort will yield the greatest benefits. It is in this daily practice that we will find our lives transformed, as we create the conditions for true lasting change. This information is not an end point, but rather a starting point, a way for you to begin reclaiming your own life and to consciously direct your energy in the most productive and fulfilling manner. And it is with this understanding that we will move to our final section, in which we will tie everything together with a key insight, providing you with a powerful and lasting framework for true self-mastery. Let us now delve deeper into the Stoic framework, understanding that true fulfillment stems from inner virtue, not external achievement. For the Stoic, the only true good is our moral character, which is cultivated through the consistent practice of virtues. These are not abstract concepts, but rather practical guidelines for action. Wisdom, for example, involves making sound judgments, not just acquiring knowledge. Justice is about acting fairly and with integrity in all our interactions. Courage is the ability to face adversity without losing our composure. And temperance is the practice of self-control, avoiding excess and finding balance in all things. These virtues are not merely ideals to strive for, but active principles that guide our daily choices. The consistent practice of these virtues becomes the path toward a truly meaningful life, a life that is not reliant on external validation, but is instead firmly rooted in a sense of inner integrity. It is through our actions that we show our values, and this is a constant choice that is presented to us at every turn. This understanding is paramount to the Stoic, for it highlights that true happiness comes from who we are and not what we have, which directly opposes our modern tendency towards external validation. By illustrating the importance of these core principles, we can begin to see how they function as practical guides, rather than unattainable ideals, providing a clear path forward. Consider the scenario of a person facing an ethical dilemma at work. They are presented with an opportunity to gain a personal advantage by compromising their integrity. However, if they choose the virtue of justice as their guiding principle, they would act with fairness, even if it means a personal loss. This action, which stems from their chosen virtue, is the only thing that truly matters. Or, let's take a look at someone who is insulted by another person. Rather than reacting impulsively with anger, they choose to respond with wisdom, carefully considering their words and actions. They evaluate their own internal state and the nature of the insult before choosing their response. This demonstrates that virtue is not a passive concept, but an active and conscious choice that guides our responses to difficult situations. The goal of Stoic practice is not to feel good, but to be good, and the emotional balance that we seek is a natural result of living according to our virtues. When we are aligned with our internal moral compass, we can navigate difficult times with an unshakable sense of inner peace. By focusing on the practice of these principles, we create a solid foundation for the rest of the Stoic framework. The consistent pursuit of these values becomes the bedrock of a meaningful and purposeful life, which allows us to navigate challenges without losing sight of what is truly important. Furthermore, Stoicism teaches us to be indifferent to external outcomes that are outside of our control. This is not about being apathetic, but rather about recognizing that our happiness should not depend on external factors that are subject to change. Wealth, fame, status, and even our health are all things that can be lost at any time, and therefore they should not dictate our emotional state. The Stoics differentiate between preference and attachment, and while we can prefer certain outcomes, we must not be emotionally attached to them. This clarifies the core message of the Stoic understanding, which is not a passive dismissal of external conditions, but instead an active choice to direct our values to the internal space where we have agency. We must understand that external validation is not a reliable source of happiness, as our emotional state is then completely reliant on the whims of the external world. This idea is a direct challenge to much of modern thinking, which is rooted in external markers of success and achievement, while failing to recognize the importance of internal stability. The Stoic, however, understands that true fulfillment is based on cultivating a strong inner character. By illustrating this point with the example of an athlete who is devoted to their sport, but overly attached to the outcome of a championship, we can see how this leads to inevitable suffering, disappointment, and frustration. They dedicate years of hard work, sacrificing much, and their entire emotional state is then dependent on their performance on the day of the competition. If they lose, they are crushed. If they win, their joy is fleeting, as they quickly become anxious about the next competition. In contrast, if they were devoted to the training, preparation, and personal growth, whilst remaining indifferent to the outcome, they would be less susceptible to negative emotions, while still providing themselves with a clear and meaningful goal. It is through this that they can also reduce the emotional shock of loss or defeat. The same framework can be applied to a business person or an artist, and we can explore their attachment to external results and how they can reorient their values to the process and not the result. The painter who is fixated on the sale of his art will become easily discouraged if they cannot find buyers, whilst the one who is focused on the act of creation will find meaning in the process, regardless of the outcome. It's the quality of the work itself, and their own personal commitment to it, that matters. In both of these examples, we can see that when we place our emotional well-being in the hands of external outcomes, we're setting ourselves up for a great deal of unnecessary suffering. It is in choosing to be indifferent to external results, and instead orienting our energy towards process and personal values, that we create a more stable emotional foundation. Furthermore, the Stoic understands the power of present moment focus, knowing that it is the only space in which we can act virtuously. When we dwell on the past, we are plagued by regret, and when we worry about the future, we are consumed by anxiety. But the present moment is the only time we can have any effect on our internal state or external events. By focusing on the now, we're better equipped to choose our actions with intention and virtue, and to avoid being swept away by unproductive emotional states. This concept is closely tied to the idea of not giving a FCK, as it allows us to consciously choose where to place our attention and energy at any given moment. We can explore the benefits of this practice by using a common example and see how it changes our perspective. Let's take a look at the scenario of a person who is stuck in traffic. They can choose to create a state of suffering by becoming angry and frustrated, dwelling on their inability to control the situation. Or they can choose to accept it and shift their focus to the present moment. They can observe their breath, their feelings, and their physical sensations. They might choose to listen to music or simply enjoy the moment. By choosing not to dwell on their past actions or their future appointments, they reclaim their focus and energy and redirect it towards the only moment where they can actually have any influence. This highlights that when we actively engage with the present, we can avoid falling into states of unnecessary suffering and instead actively choose how we experience each situation. This connects back to the idea of choosing where we place our focus and attention, and how this choice allows us to avoid unproductive emotional states. The practice of present moment awareness becomes the pathway to a more intentional and focused life. We are not doomed to react automatically. We have the capacity to choose where we place our attention, and in this choice, we find true power. Finally, the Stoics understood that everything is temporary, that nothing lasts forever, and that by embracing this fact, we can greatly reduce our suffering. They introduced the concept of amor fati, which translates to love of fate. This is not a passive acceptance of whatever happens, but rather an active embracing of all that life presents, both the good and the bad, as necessary parts of the natural order of the universe. Even the events that we perceive as negative or undesirable can be used as opportunities to practice our virtues and to grow in character. This idea challenges the modern notion of constant self-improvement and perfection, as it demonstrates that the path to wisdom lies in accepting what is. It connects directly to the core message of intentional value selection and acceptance of the present moment, as it highlights that all moments, both pleasurable and painful, can be used as learning opportunities. We must understand that the goal is not to avoid suffering, but to find meaning and purpose within it. Consider the scenario where a person loses their job, experiences a breakup, or receives bad news about their health. Instead of reacting with anger, despair, and frustration, they can reframe these events as something that is not within their control, and therefore they can be met with acceptance. They can even embrace them as opportunities for growth. A job loss could provide an opportunity to explore a different career path that is more aligned with their values. A breakup could offer a chance to reflect on past relationships and to learn how to create healthier ones. And bad news about one's health can encourage a person to prioritize well-being and to adopt new habits. By embracing these events, they use them as fuel for change and not as a cause for suffering. This clearly shows that Stoic acceptance is not passive resignation, but an active choice in how to relate to the events of our lives, using the difficult times as stepping stones toward a more meaningful existence. By not resisting the reality of change, and instead embracing it, we align with the natural order of the universe and find peace within it. Now, let us address some of the most common misconceptions surrounding Stoicism. One of the biggest misunderstandings is the idea that Stoics are emotionless and apathetic, but this is not true. Stoicism is not about suppressing or eliminating emotions, but about managing and choosing our emotional responses. It is about active engagement with the world, and not about passive indifference. The practice of not giving our FCK is not about apathy, but an active, intentional choice, guided by our personally selected values and the desire to live a virtuous and meaningful life. Apathy, on the other hand, is a lack of concern and motivation, and is the opposite of the Stoic approach, which is centered around intentional action and personal responsibility. By clarifying this difference, we can see how the core message is not about detachment, but about directing our energies to what we believe is truly valuable. In contrast to the image of a Stoic as cold and detached, Stoicism is actually about actively responding to injustice with a sense of kindness and compassion. However, all of these actions are chosen from a place of control and are not based on unchecked emotional reactivity. This highlights the difference between reacting and acting with intention, and it is the intentional action that is emphasized within the Stoic philosophy. When we act out of reactivity, we are driven by the whims of our emotions, often creating more suffering for ourselves and others. But when we act with intention, guided by our values, we are better equipped to make choices that are aligned with our deepest sense of purpose. This connects back to the dichotomy of control, emphasizing that the most important element is choosing where to place our attention and energy. The true Stoic is not someone who feels nothing, but rather someone who channels their energy toward actions that are guided by reason and virtue. Furthermore, it must also be made clear that Stoics do not suppress or eliminate emotions, but they use reason to evaluate them and then direct them appropriately. Emotions are natural and are an inherent part of being human, and the Stoics did not see them as inherently negative. Instead, they should be seen as data, providing valuable information about our internal state. By seeing them as data, we can then use our reason to understand what is triggering us and how to direct our actions in a purposeful manner. This process is not about eliminating the emotion, but about changing our reaction to it. The Stoic understands that our values will inform which actions are appropriate for each emotion, and this process of value selection allows us to use our emotions as data, rather than allowing them to guide our actions automatically. Let's explore a scenario where a person feels anger. The Stoic would acknowledge the emotion without allowing it to control their actions. Instead, they might use this anger as a signal for an injustice that needs to be corrected, without creating more negative emotions as a result of unchecked reactivity. They will look for the meaning behind their anger and use that knowledge to inform their next action. This demonstrates that emotions can be a source of information and also a catalyst for virtuous action. It should be noted that this is a process of mindful emotional evaluation, requiring a high level of self-awareness and control. It is through this process that we move from being controlled by our emotions to using our reason as a guiding force in our actions. It is also crucial to differentiate Stoicism from passivity. It's not about avoiding action, but rather about acting with intention and virtue. The acceptance of what we cannot control empowers us to act with focus and efficiency in the areas where we can make a difference. It is an active engagement with the world, not a passive resignation to its challenges. Many mistakenly believe that if we accept that something is outside of our control, that we have no influence, but this is completely inaccurate, as it is the act of accepting what is beyond our control that allows us to use our energy more productively. The focus is not on passively waiting for change, but on actively creating the conditions for change where that is possible. It should be noted that when we accept the things that we cannot change, we are able to use our time and energy more efficiently, whilst eliminating unnecessary negative emotions. Let's examine how a Stoic might deal with social injustice. Rather than reacting with rage and anger, they choose to take specific action to influence a particular outcome in their sphere of influence. They might join a protest, volunteer their time, donate to an organization, or use their platform to raise awareness. All of these actions are born from reason and are based on well-chosen values. This demonstrates that the Stoic understands that we have the ability to make a difference, but that the choice of action is not born of impulsive reaction, but rather careful calculation. The Stoic approach reduces the amount of suffering and wasted energy. The difference between these two approaches lies in where the energy is directed, and the Stoic approach is more strategic, purposeful, and ultimately more effective. Finally, it must be understood that Stoic acceptance of what we cannot control allows us to focus on areas where we can have a positive impact, and it is this power of intentional choice that creates the biggest distinction between apathy and Stoicism. When we accept the things that are outside of our sphere of influence, we are able to more efficiently engage with those that are within it. This is an active practice of carefully selecting where our attention, energy, and resources are directed. It is a conscious choice of where to focus our attention so we can act most effectively and not become distracted by things that are beyond our influence. This is the power of the Stoic understanding, as it allows us to prioritize the areas where we can truly make a difference and to release ourselves from the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. For example, a person facing a health issue might accept the diagnosis, but also choose to focus their energy on adopting new, healthier habits. Instead of dwelling on anger and despair, they actively choose to take responsibility for their condition. The acceptance of the situation is the prerequisite for action. When we dwell on what cannot be changed, we are paralyzed by fear. But when we accept that reality, we are able to take meaningful steps to influence the areas where we can make a difference. This demonstrates that acceptance is not about resignation, but instead, it is the prerequisite for action. Let's now explore some practical Stoic tools and techniques that you can use in your everyday life. The daily practice of reflection and journaling allows us to examine our thoughts, judgments, and values. This daily practice allows us to track our progress in applying Stoic principles in our own life, and is a method of constantly reevaluating our progress. By examining our daily life, we begin to spot patterns of behavior and thought distortions that prevent us from applying the Stoic understanding in a meaningful way. This daily practice will allow us to create the necessary space to make adjustments to our approach and to continue moving towards our goals. For example, a Stoic journal could be structured around 3 key questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my values? And what could I have done differently? By asking these questions and writing down our responses, we can gain deeper levels of self-awareness and highlight the areas where we can make a difference. This practice does not require a great deal of time. Even a short 5 to 10 minutes can bring about positive changes. What matters is that we show up every day and take the time to reflect on our own experiences. By developing this regular habit, we become more aware of our patterns and triggers, and therefore better equipped to manage them. Cognitive restructuring is a technique that is used in modern cognitive behavioral therapy and is also a core element of Stoic practice. This process is based on the understanding that our emotions are created through our judgments and evaluations of events, and by consciously reevaluating our thought patterns, we are better able to manage our emotional responses. The core technique involves actively identifying our thoughts, challenging the validity of those thoughts, and reframing them in a more realistic or helpful manner. This highlights the remarkable similarities between ancient philosophical practices and modern psychological techniques. By understanding that our emotions are created through our judgments, we reclaim our personal agency and are no longer at the mercy of our automatic responses. Let's use a specific example to explore this process. Imagine someone experiencing social anxiety. They might have thoughts like, everyone is judging me, or I am going to make a fool of myself. These thoughts are not based on reality, and by identifying these distortions, we can begin to actively challenge them. We could ask, is it really true that everyone is judging you? Is there any evidence of this? What are the chances of making a fool of yourself? By questioning the validity of these thoughts, and by reframing them, we reduce the intensity of the emotional reaction, and we can then more effectively manage these difficult situations. By understanding that our emotions are dependent on our judgments, we can change these patterns by changing our thoughts, which requires deliberate and conscious effort. Another powerful tool in the Stoic toolkit is the art of voluntary discomfort. This involves actively seeking out discomfort as a method for building resilience, gratitude, and for reducing our dependency on external comforts. By intentionally placing ourselves in uncomfortable situations, we reduce our attachment to comfort and ease, and therefore we become better equipped to handle future hardships. This connects back to the practice of negative visualization as we mentally prepare for difficult times and reduce their emotional impact when they inevitably arise. We must understand that a life of constant comfort and ease makes us less equipped to deal with future challenges, which highlights the importance of voluntary discomfort. We can present examples of fasting, cold showers, or periods of voluntary solitude. Although these practices might be unpleasant in the short term, they reduce our dependency on external comforts, making it easier to deal with future problems and creating a higher degree of gratitude for what we already have. This is not about being miserable. It is instead about strengthening our inner character and becoming less susceptible to external conditions. In this way, we create a deeper sense of inner strength that is not dependent on our external environment. Finally, it should be noted that finding purpose through service is a powerful method for discovering and reinforcing our values. When we contribute to something greater than ourselves, we find a sense of meaning that transcends our personal desires and provides a powerful sense of direction, even in the face of difficult challenges. This sense of purpose provides us with a clear anchor point for all of our choices, making it easier to manage difficult times. The Stoic philosophy is deeply rooted in the responsibility that we have to others and to the greater world. By acting with purpose, we are not only contributing to society, we are also strengthening our own values and providing a clear and meaningful direction for all of our efforts. We can explore the example of volunteering in our local community or helping out our friends and family. These acts of kindness not only make us feel more connected to those around us, but they also provide us with a sense of direction that is rooted in our chosen values. This type of service connects back to the core idea of virtue, highlighting that acting virtuously requires action and also a desire to contribute to something greater than ourselves. By connecting with a larger purpose, we create meaning, regardless of the difficulties that we face in our daily life. All of this brings us to the importance of the cycle of continuous improvement. Applying Stoic principles is not a destination, it is an ongoing process of growth and refinement, with setbacks being seen as an inherent part of the learning process. This is not a linear journey, and instead it is iterative, requiring patience, self-awareness, and also self-compassion. We must understand that mistakes are not failures, but opportunities to learn and to grow, and that we should use them as fuel for our future efforts. It is through this process of continuous reflection, action, and refinement that we create the space for lasting change. Let's consider an example of a musician learning a new instrument. The path is not linear, and there are setbacks. However, these setbacks are not seen as failures, but instead, they are seen as opportunities to practice and to learn. By adopting this perspective, the musician is able to approach their challenges with patience, understanding, and self-compassion. This same approach can also be applied to Stoic principles, as every difficult situation provides an opportunity to practice our virtues. It should also be noted that we must always be kind to ourselves, as self-compassion is a crucial part of this process. This brings us to a point where we can redefine not giving a FCK from a Stoic perspective. It is about consciously choosing our values and focus, and actively selecting what we give our attention to while remaining indifferent to the rest. It is a strategic choice, and not an act of apathy. It is about living virtuously, focusing on our own values, and acting with intention. This concept is connected to every key point that has been addressed so far, and all of these points work together to create a unified framework for living in accordance with the natural order of the universe and with our own chosen values. The practical techniques that have been introduced are designed to refine this process, allowing us to manage our own internal state, regardless of the external conditions that we face. This finally prepares us for the conclusion. This journey is not just about managing our problems. It is instead about discovering the potential of our own inner character, and there is a final piece of the puzzle that will help us to apply this understanding to our own lives. Now, let's translate these powerful concepts into a practical framework for action, starting with the clarification of our personal values. Values are not abstract ideas. They are the guiding principles that shape our choices and define what truly matters to us. Often, we operate based on values that have been inherited from our family, our culture, or our society, without ever truly questioning if these align with our authentic selves. Therefore, the first step is to consciously identify and articulate our core personal values, moving beyond generic terms to clearly defined behaviors. This process requires introspection and honesty, and is a necessary step towards living a more intentional life. We must understand that values are not just words, they are the principles that guide our actions, and when we choose to live in alignment with them, we find a deeper sense of purpose. To begin this process, take out a journal and ask yourself, what qualities do I admire in others? What activities make me feel most alive and engaged? What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Write down all of your initial responses without censoring yourself. Then, take a closer look at the list and start identifying patterns or themes that emerge. You might notice that many of your responses relate to honesty, creativity, service, growth, or connection. Once you identify these themes, try to reduce your list down to about 3 to 5 core values. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but rather a selection of the most important principles that will guide your actions. For example, if you value creativity, that would not simply be a word on a list, but instead a guiding principle that manifests as a consistent effort to pursue creative endeavors, even in the face of challenges. Or, if you value honesty, then you must ask yourself how that is reflected in your actions and in your interactions with others. This should prompt you to reevaluate any behaviors that are not in alignment with this core value. As a final step in the value selection process, ask yourself how each of these chosen values might manifest in your daily life, and then write down specific examples. This will bring your abstract values into clear focus and make them ready for practical application. You will also have created a reference guide to help guide you towards better choices. Let's look at a specific scenario. Someone who values courage might decide to take on a challenging project at work despite their fear of failure, using that core value to guide their choice. It is through this level of clarity that we transform abstract concepts into actionable principles that guide our behavior, creating a clear path towards a more purposeful existence. Now that you have identified your core values, it is time to explore how to align your daily actions with these chosen principles. This requires us to evaluate our actions with intentionality and to ensure they are consistent with our values. When we operate without a clear understanding of our core principles, we often find ourselves pulled in different directions, acting on impulse, and often creating results that do not reflect our inner needs. However, when we evaluate our actions with a clear understanding of our core values, we are able to make better choices, reduce distractions, and move towards a more intentional life. This process of assessment is an ongoing practice, requiring constant self-reflection and a willingness to change direction when necessary. For example, let's examine a scenario where someone is faced with a choice between going out with friends or working on a creative project. If their core value is creativity, then they would choose to work on their project, even if it means missing out on the social opportunity. However, if their core value was connection, they might make a different choice. The key here is that we are choosing our actions based on our values, and not simply acting on impulse. We must constantly examine our behaviors, asking ourselves if they are truly aligned with what we believe is most important. This applies not only to major life decisions, but also to our daily routines and interactions. You can also evaluate existing habits by asking if they are aligned with your core values, and if they are not, make a specific plan to change them. If you value health, then evaluate your eating habits and create a clear plan of action that is aligned with your values, rather than leaving it to chance. This is not a simple fix, and instead requires dedication and vigilance, but is a key aspect of the Stoic framework, which requires active and continuous self-evaluation. This is a process of conscious and intentional living, which is the core of the not giving a FCK mindset. It is about actively choosing where we direct our attention, energy, and efforts, and aligning our actions with what truly matters to us. Building on this idea, let's explore how value alignment is key to setting meaningful goals. So often, we set goals based on external pressures, social norms, or superficial desires. We chase money, fame, status, or other markers of external success, only to discover that they do not fulfill us, and often leave us feeling empty. However, when we align our goals with our core values, they transform from simple desires into true expressions of our deepest purpose. This shift is fundamental, and it allows us to pursue our goals with greater passion, meaning, and resilience. A goal is not merely something to achieve, but an expression of what we hold to be truly meaningful. For example, if your core value is learning, then you might set a goal to learn a new skill. This goal is not based on external pressure, but rather it is an expression of your internal values. If your core value is service, then you might set a goal to volunteer for a cause that you believe in, knowing that this act aligns with what is meaningful to you. Let's take a deeper look at the process. You begin by identifying an existing goal, then you examine it through the lens of your core values. If there is an alignment, then you can move forward with greater confidence, knowing that you are on a clear path. However, if there is no clear alignment, you can then reevaluate that goal and make adjustments that bring it into harmony with your values. You might discover that you want to start a business because of the perceived financial reward. If financial reward is not a core value, then it will be difficult to find the inner motivation to move forward. However, if you adjust the goal to reflect a value of contribution to society, then you might have greater success. It is through this understanding that we can create goals that are truly meaningful, and that will provide us with a clear sense of purpose. This allows you to move forward with greater focus and intention, which is the driving force of the Stoic understanding. When we have a clear purpose that is aligned with our values, we are more resilient to distractions and setbacks, and therefore more likely to stay the course. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that we often face situations where our values seem to conflict. This is an unavoidable aspect of human existence. The demands of family, career, and personal interests often pull us in different directions. When we are unclear about our values, this can lead to a great deal of frustration and indecision, often leaving us feeling paralyzed. The Stoic understanding does not claim to provide all the answers, but it does provide a clear path forward when we are faced with conflicting values. It is through reason and mindfulness that we are able to make choices, and to accept that perfection is not the goal. Instead, it is about continuous movement and refinement. When we are faced with this situation, we must carefully evaluate each value and the potential impact of our choices, always trying to find the option that is most in alignment with our deepest understanding of what is meaningful. For example, you might value your family and also value your career. A situation might arise where you are offered a promotion that requires you to work longer hours or to move away from your family. In this situation, you would not be able to choose both. However, by using a stoic approach, you can evaluate each choice using your reason and your selected values. You might choose the promotion if you feel it is better aligned with your overall purpose, whilst making an agreement with your family to connect at specific times. Or you might decide to prioritize your family, recognizing that no career goal is worth damaging those bonds. The goal is not to choose the perfect answer, but instead to make a choice that is informed by reason and is in alignment with your understanding of what matters most. This is not a process of eliminating conflict, but instead a process of accepting that conflict is an inherent part of the human experience. When you are clear on your values, you have the ability to make better choices and to move forward with confidence, knowing that you have used your reason to guide you towards your most meaningful path. By understanding and accepting that all choices will have consequences, we reduce the suffering caused by indecision and embrace our ability to choose how we respond to complex situations. Now, let's transition to the practical application of the dichotomy of control in our daily life. It is not enough to intellectually understand this core Stoic principle. We must also be able to use it as a practical tool. This requires a specific method of how we can use this technique in any given situation. The key here is to actively identify what is within our control and what is not. This begins with a close examination of each situation that we face, breaking it down into its core elements, and then classifying each component according to our sphere of influence. The goal is to clearly identify where we have agency and where we must simply accept the reality of what is. This process allows us to redirect our attention and energy to where it can make the biggest impact. To begin, when you are faced with a situation, take a moment to pause and then write down every element of that situation. Then, take a second look at the list and ask yourself which of these elements are within your control and which of them are not. Elements within your control are your thoughts, actions, and reactions. Elements outside of your control are the actions of others, the past, the future, and the external world. You might be in a situation where you are being criticized by your boss. You cannot control their opinion, you cannot control their criticism, and you cannot control their behavior. What you can control is how you choose to react to it. You can choose to internalize the criticism and allow it to trigger negative emotions, or you can choose to remain neutral and use their feedback to grow and to improve. You also have control over whether you choose to respond in a calm and constructive manner or react impulsively with defensiveness. The first step of understanding the dichotomy of control is to examine the components of any problem and to clearly define which of these elements are within your sphere of influence. This will highlight where you have the ability to create positive change and where you need to shift your focus and accept the situation as it is. Having identified the elements that are within your control, it's time to redirect your energy towards them. So often, we waste precious time and effort trying to control the uncontrollable. This is often due to deeply ingrained patterns that pull us towards worry, anxiety, or frustration. The practice of focusing on the controllable requires that we actively reorient our attention and instead place it on what is within our sphere of influence. This is a deliberate act of will and requires consistent effort and practice. When we waste our time and energy on things we cannot control, we are often left feeling overwhelmed and helpless. However, when we redirect that same energy towards what we can influence, we regain our sense of personal agency, and we are better equipped to make a positive difference. To make this concrete, imagine you are stuck in traffic and are feeling frustrated and stressed by the situation. You cannot control the traffic, you cannot control other drivers, and you cannot control the external environment. These are all outside of your sphere of influence. You are wasting precious mental energy by focusing on those elements, and therefore, you are making a bad situation even worse. However, you can choose to redirect your attention towards elements within your control. You can control how you react to the situation, and you can choose to listen to a podcast, to enjoy the silence, or to practice a breathing exercise. This redirection of your energy changes the dynamic of the situation and reduces the levels of stress, whilst also creating a more productive state. It is through this redirection that we reclaim our personal power and take control of our internal state. This act of focus and value selection is a key component of the not giving a FCK mindset and demonstrates that it is not about being passive, but instead about choosing where you place your energy. By understanding that you cannot control the traffic, you free yourself from the suffering that comes from resisting reality, and instead redirect your energy to those areas that will improve your own experience. Equally important is learning to accept what cannot be changed, not with resignation or indifference, but with a clear understanding that it is a prerequisite for acting effectively in areas where we do have influence. When we resist reality, we are creating unnecessary suffering. However, when we accept reality as it is, we are creating the space to work productively with the elements that are within our control. This is not a passive dismissal of a situation, but instead an active choice to align with the present moment. The goal is not to be indifferent, but instead to reorient our energy so that we are no longer wasting it on the uncontrollable. When we accept reality, we free up resources that can be better used in areas that have a greater potential for growth and positive change. Let's explore an example where you receive a bad medical diagnosis. You cannot change the diagnosis, you cannot change the past, and you cannot change your current situation. All of these elements are outside of your sphere of influence. However, by accepting the reality of the situation, you are able to take positive steps to improve your health. You might decide to research treatment options, to consult with medical experts, to improve your eating habits, and to start an exercise program. All of these actions are within your control, and by choosing to focus on them, you empower yourself and also reduce the negative emotional impact of the situation. This highlights that accepting reality creates the necessary space for action, and that it is an active component of moving forward. This type of acceptance is not about giving up, but instead, it is about reclaiming your power and using it wisely. This allows us to focus our attention and energy on what truly matters, which is the very essence of the not giving a FCK mindset. To further enhance your capacity for intentional action, let's explore the practice of using a pause and reflect technique. It is in this space that we can consciously choose our actions, instead of simply reacting automatically. The technique involves creating a brief pause before responding to a situation that triggers a strong emotional reaction, and using that pause to make a better choice. It is in this space that we can observe what is happening without reacting automatically, allowing us to move towards intentional action. This is not a passive waiting period, but instead an active opportunity to evaluate our thoughts and emotions. By learning to create this space, we reduce the likelihood of impulsive reactions and allow ourselves to use our reason instead of our emotions to guide our actions. This is a practice of mindfulness, and it is a key element of the Stoic understanding. To begin, practice recognizing the moment when you are about to react. Often, you will notice a physical sensation, an emotion, or a certain thought that signals that you are about to act automatically. In this moment, you should deliberately pause and take a deep breath. Create a moment of stillness. Use this time to observe your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without judgment. Then ask yourself, what is the best possible action that I can take in this situation? It is in this space that you can move from reactivity to intentionality, choosing actions that are informed by your values and by reason rather than by emotional impulse. For example, if you are insulted by someone, instead of automatically responding with anger or defensiveness, you can pause, breathe, evaluate your emotions, and choose the best possible response. You might decide to ignore the insult, to calmly explain your perspective, or to choose to walk away. All of these are chosen with intention and not as a result of unchecked emotions. This simple practice of pausing and reflecting can dramatically improve your responses to difficult situations and move you closer to self-mastery. By practicing this technique consistently, you create a greater degree of separation between your experiences and your responses, allowing you to act with greater clarity and intention. Now, let's explore practical methods for emotional regulation, which will further empower us to make better choices. This begins with the practice of mindful awareness of our emotions. All too often, we are swept away by our emotions without understanding their nature or origins. However, by learning to observe our emotions without judgment, we create a space between ourselves and our experience, which allows us to make better choices. When we see our emotions as information, we can use that information to improve our responses to difficult situations. This does not mean suppressing our emotions, but instead recognizing them as a source of valuable data. This is a key shift, as it changes our relationship with the full spectrum of our emotional experiences. To begin, when you notice an emotion arise, simply acknowledge it without judging it. Say to yourself, "I am feeling angry," or "I am feeling sad," and notice how that emotion feels in your body. Do not judge this process or get carried away with the emotion. Instead, simply observe. Ask yourself what the intensity of the emotion is and if it is changing. It is in this space that you are able to separate yourself from your emotional experience, and this allows you to evaluate it more effectively. This also changes your relationship with your emotions from being controlled by them to understanding them as information that can be used to improve your actions. For example, if you feel a sudden spike of anger, instead of acting on it automatically, you can pause, observe the emotion, and then use your reason to determine your best course of action. By consistently practicing this mindful observation, you will gain a deeper understanding of your emotional patterns, and you will also create greater degrees of control over your responses. This is a core practice in emotional regulation, as it allows you to respond with intentionality instead of simply reacting to whatever comes your way. Building on this, let's explore the practical application of cognitive reframing, which is a powerful technique for managing the underlying thought patterns that create our emotional responses. The goal is not to eliminate our negative thoughts, but to challenge and reframe them, transforming them into more realistic and helpful perspectives. This does not happen automatically and requires active engagement with our internal dialogue. Cognitive reframing requires that we actively question the validity of our thoughts and explore alternative interpretations. This is not a process of suppressing our feelings, but instead of changing the underlying conditions that create them. To begin, when you notice a negative thought, write it down. Then ask yourself, is this thought actually true? What evidence do I have to support this thought? Is there an alternative explanation? Often, you will discover that your thoughts are based on assumptions or distorted perceptions rather than on actual facts. For example, if you are feeling anxious about an upcoming presentation, you might have thoughts like, "I am going to fail," or "Everyone will laugh at me." These thoughts are not based on actual facts, they are based on distorted perceptions. Instead, you can reframe these thoughts into something more constructive and realistic. "I have prepared well, and I am capable of doing a good job." Or, "Even if I make a mistake, it is not the end of the world." By actively challenging and reframing your thoughts, you can significantly reduce your levels of anxiety and stress. This approach is not about positive thinking, but instead a practice of thinking more accurately and realistically. By understanding that our thoughts directly influence our emotions, we can take the necessary steps to change those patterns. This is a constant practice, requiring consistent effort, but it is a key element of self-mastery. Now let's discuss the premeditation of evil's exercise, which is a technique of negative visualization, which helps to reduce anxiety by preparing for potential setbacks and instilling a greater sense of gratitude for what is present. This practice is often misunderstood as being negative or pessimistic, but it is actually a powerful method of developing resilience and managing our emotional responses to difficult situations. The goal is not to dwell on the negative, but instead to mentally prepare for a range of potential outcomes, which allows us to move forward with less fear and greater inner stability. This exercise can help to reduce the negative emotional impact of difficult events by mentally preparing for the possibility of their occurrence and making us more appreciative of what we have in the present moment. To begin this practice, find a quiet space and choose a specific situation that might cause anxiety or stress. Visualize the potential setbacks and challenges that you might face, and then consider how you might respond to them. This process of visualization will help you to prepare mentally for a range of possible outcomes, and will also reduce your emotional attachment to any particular result. You might visualize losing your job, experiencing a breakup, or having a health issue. By doing this, you will realize that these are all potential situations that we might encounter, and they are not as catastrophic as we imagine them to be. By creating this mental preparation, you also create an awareness of how precious your current reality is, thus promoting a greater sense of gratitude. For example, imagine that you are planning an important trip and you are concerned about the possibility of delays or cancellations. You can visualize the potential challenges and then create a plan for how you might handle them. By doing so, you are not creating negativity, but instead, you are mentally preparing for all possibilities, thus reducing the likelihood of a negative emotional reaction. This exercise allows you to gain a new perspective and reduces the likelihood of being overwhelmed by unexpected events. The power of this technique is that it is not about avoiding discomfort, but it is instead about building resilience and gaining a deeper appreciation for what is. Finally, the practice of gratitude provides a powerful antidote to negative thinking and allows us to focus on the positive aspects of our lives. It shifts our focus from what is lacking to what is present, and by consistently practicing gratitude, we improve our overall sense of well-being. The practice of gratitude is not about ignoring our challenges, but instead, it's a method of reorienting our attention and cultivating a greater sense of appreciation for what we already have. This consistent focus on the positive changes our relationship with reality and allows us to view our circumstances with greater clarity and peace. To integrate this practice into your daily routine, you can simply keep a gratitude journal and write down 3 to 5 things that you are grateful for. These might be simple things, such as your health, your relationships, your home, or your skills. You can also use this as a method to reframe negative events by focusing on the positive lessons that can be learned from them. This is not a simple feel-good exercise. It is a method of retraining your attention and shifting your perception of the world. You might choose to focus on a new friendship, on a personal achievement, or a skill that you have developed. By focusing on the positive aspects of our lives, we create a sense of abundance and reduce the tendency towards negative emotional states. This is a process that reinforces the core principle of value selection, as it draws our attention to what is truly meaningful. By consistently practicing gratitude, we develop a greater sense of appreciation for the present moment, and therefore are more likely to live a life of purpose, meaning, and joy. Now, let's explore how to integrate these practices to create increased self-awareness and self-mastery. Daily journaling is a powerful tool for discovering your personal values, for tracking your thought patterns, and for reflecting on your daily actions. It is through this process of reflection that we gain deeper insight into our own nature, and we can then use that knowledge to create positive change. This is not a simple act of writing down your thoughts, but instead, it's a method of engaging with your inner world and bringing into awareness those patterns that might be creating limitations. Journaling is a process of self-discovery, and it should be used as a tool for ongoing learning and refinement. To get started, you might use prompts that will help you to reflect on specific aspects of your life. You can ask yourself, what are my core values and how did I live them today? What were my dominant thoughts and emotions? What could I have done better? What am I grateful for? You might also want to track specific goals and assess whether or not you are making progress, or reflect on a situation where you did not react well, and assess how you might improve your response next time. It should be noted that this process is not meant to be a judgment, but instead a learning experience. Your journal is a safe space to explore your thoughts and to track your progress, allowing you to grow at your own pace. It is through this daily practice that you create a strong foundation for self-awareness and self-mastery and allow you to move forward with greater intentionality. By consistently showing up and engaging with these core questions, you will create a clear path towards a more meaningful life. Another crucial element of self-mastery is the ability to identify your personal triggers. These are the people, places, or situations that cause you to react with strong negative emotions. These triggers can often be rooted in past experiences and patterns, and until we become aware of them, we will continue to react automatically. However, when we identify our personal triggers, we are better equipped to prepare for them, and therefore we can improve our responses. It is through this practice that we are able to break free from reactive patterns and move toward intentional responses. The goal is not to avoid our triggers, but instead to learn how to respond to them with greater awareness and control. To begin, you should write down situations where you have reacted negatively and then examine them closely. What was the specific trigger? What thoughts and emotions did it create? What was your reaction? Then, analyze these situations to identify common patterns and themes. You will probably discover that certain people or situations tend to produce a negative reaction. Once you have this information, you can prepare for those triggers by creating a plan for how to respond. This might involve practicing the pause and reflect technique, or using cognitive reframing, or using the premeditation of evils exercise. By having a clear strategy in place, you reduce the likelihood of reacting automatically and increase the chance of responding with intention. This awareness is a critical aspect of self-mastery, and it allows you to navigate your life with greater control and confidence. By proactively identifying your triggers and then creating a plan for how you will respond, you are better equipped to deal with them, reducing their power over your emotions. Building on this self-awareness, let's explore how to create a personal code of conduct that will guide your behavior and reinforce your chosen value system. This code of conduct is like a personal constitution, which provides guidelines that will be used for every decision. It is not an inflexible set of rules, but instead a dynamic set of guiding principles that will evolve with your growth and understanding. By writing down a code of conduct, you are able to create a clear reference point for all of your actions. This code of conduct is a powerful tool which helps to reduce impulsive behaviors and to ensure that your actions are always aligned with your values. It is in this creation process that you also reinforce what you truly believe to be important, which helps to provide meaning and direction. To begin creating your personal code, you might start by using the principles of Stoicism as a foundation. You can write down that you will prioritize reason over emotion, that you will act virtuously, that you will focus on what you can control, and that you will accept the reality of what you cannot. You can then add to this code by including your chosen personal values, creating a detailed list that will guide all of your actions. This code should also include specific methods for dealing with difficult situations, using the tools that have been discussed so far. This will act as a clear reminder of what you believe to be true and guide your actions, even when you are under stress. You should also make it a point to review and update this code on a regular basis, as you will inevitably evolve and grow. In doing so, you will be further reinforcing the core principles of Stoicism while also moving closer to self-mastery. Finally, it must always be emphasized that the path towards self-improvement is not about perfection, but about continuous and conscious growth. We are not meant to be perfect, and mistakes are an inherent part of the learning process. We must learn to embrace imperfection, to be kind to ourselves, and to use our mistakes as opportunities for learning. This is a critical message, and a challenge to the modern pursuit of perfection, which can be a source of a great deal of unnecessary suffering. It is through self-compassion that we learn to forgive ourselves for our shortcomings and to move forward with greater clarity and determination. When we make a mistake or fall short of our ideals, we should not engage in self-criticism or self-condemnation. Instead, we should examine what happened, identify our errors, and then learn how to avoid them in the future. This process is a form of self-compassion, as it acknowledges that we are human and that we will inevitably make mistakes. But we can also use those mistakes to grow, improve, and move forward with greater understanding. By embracing this mindset, we are able to create a positive cycle of growth, learning, and improvement, instead of being held back by our fears of not being perfect. This is a message of hope, and it reinforces the idea that the path towards self-mastery is not about being perfect, but about continuously striving towards something better. All of these practices, tools, and techniques create a powerful system for self-improvement, and they are all designed to function together as a cohesive whole. This is not about adding a new set of rules, but it is instead about creating an internal environment that is conducive to growth, self-awareness, and resilience. This is how all of the elements are designed to connect to one another, which will allow you to navigate even the most difficult situations with a sense of inner peace. Let's briefly recap all of the core practices that have been discussed. The dichotomy of control helps us to focus on what we can influence and to accept what we cannot. Cognitive reframing allows us to change the underlying thought patterns that create our emotional reactions. Journaling helps us to track our progress and to make necessary adjustments to our approach. Mindful awareness gives us a deeper understanding of our emotions and provides the space to make better choices. And finally, value selection provides a clear set of principles that will guide our actions and bring meaning to our lives. All of these different practices and tools are designed to function together, which creates a synergistic approach for self-improvement. They are not meant to be independent concepts, but instead, they are designed to interact and support each other in a unified whole. We must also reiterate the true meaning of not giving a FCK from a Stoic perspective. It is not about being apathetic or indifferent, but instead, it is about intentionally focusing our energy on what truly matters, while remaining indifferent to the rest. It is about aligning our actions with our values, accepting the reality of what is, and acting with intention. This is an active choice and a conscious effort, which is rooted in a desire to live virtuously. This is not a passive resignation to external circumstances. It is instead an active and intentional choice to guide our energy towards what is meaningful. All of the practices that we have covered are designed to make this process more accessible and more effective. This is not a one-time fix. It is an ongoing process of growth, self-awareness, and self-mastery. It is a long journey, and consistency is the key to unlocking the full potential of these practices. However, each small step, each daily effort will move you closer to your goals and help you to transform your relationship to reality, creating the space for a more meaningful and purpose-driven existence. This should be seen as an invitation to commit to this long journey, knowing that the effort is worth the rewards. This is a journey that is rooted in your own personal transformation, but will also have a positive impact on the world around you. And this brings us to the final section of our journey, which will reveal the ultimate insight that will tie everything together and provide a clear call to action. We have explored many key concepts and powerful techniques, but there is one remaining piece that will illuminate the path to your own inner freedom. This will be the final layer of understanding that will create a deeper level of integration and allow you to take the first steps towards implementing these concepts into your own life. Now, let's delve into some advanced Stoic practices that you can readily integrate into your daily life, beginning with the powerful view from above technique. This practice invites you to step back from the immediacy of your current circumstances, as if you are observing your life from a great height, allowing you to gain a broader perspective and to reduce the power of your emotional reactions. This isn't about detachment in a cold or indifferent sense, but rather, it's about gaining a more objective understanding of the scale and significance of the problems that you face. When you are caught up in the details of a challenging situation, you can easily become overwhelmed by your emotions. However, when you shift your perspective to a higher vantage point, you start to see that these seemingly insurmountable problems are simply a small part of a larger and much more complex picture. This also reinforces the core Stoic principles of the dichotomy of control and the selection of values, as you begin to see your problems within the larger context of your life and your chosen priorities. To implement this technique, take a moment to find a quiet place and close your eyes. Imagine that you are floating above your current circumstances, looking down at your life from a high altitude. You might be looking down on your home, your neighborhood, your city, or even the entire planet. See the interconnectedness of everything and notice how small and insignificant your immediate problems might appear from this perspective. Now, take the specific scenario of a conflict at work. Imagine yourself observing the situation from above. You can see the entire context of the conflict, the actions of all parties involved, and the various contributing factors. You notice that your own role in this situation is only a small part of the overall picture, and that your emotional reactions are only one of the many aspects at play. This shift in perspective will often diminish the emotional charge of the conflict, allowing you to see the situation with greater objectivity. In this view from above, you might even start to see the other person's point of view, allowing you to move towards a place of empathy and also to choose a better course of action. This then allows you to make a choice, not based on an immediate reaction, but instead from an objective viewpoint, which increases your level of self-awareness. Now, with this new perspective, ask yourself, what is the best possible action that I can take? This is an active choice, based on reason, and not on the automatic reaction that would have come without the practice of the view from above. Building upon this concept, let's now explore the Stoic idea of living in accordance with nature, which is not about living in the wild, but rather, it refers to aligning yourself with the natural order of the world and accepting the flow of life. This mindset encourages you to embrace the reality of what is, and to reduce the frustration that arises from resisting the inevitable. By accepting the laws of nature and understanding that everything is impermanent, you are able to reduce your suffering and increase your overall sense of well-being. When we are constantly resisting the natural flow of events, we are creating our own suffering, and it is through this acceptance that we are able to move towards a more harmonious relationship with reality. This is not about passively giving up, but instead, it is about choosing to accept what is outside of your control and to work more effectively with the current moment. For example, consider a scenario where someone is facing a serious health issue. The diagnosis might be devastating, but it is also a natural occurrence. The Stoic perspective encourages acceptance of this reality and a focus on what can be done to improve the situation. This does not mean ignoring the problem or giving up hope, but instead, it is a conscious choice to focus on what is within your control, such as treatment options, lifestyle changes, and emotional well-being. The acceptance of a health issue doesn't mean giving up on trying to get better, but it does mean making a choice to not waste precious energy by resisting reality or wishing for a different outcome. It allows one to work effectively with the present moment and to make choices based on reason and not based on emotional reactivity. This is a powerful message, as it highlights that acceptance of reality is a key step in moving towards effective action. It is this combination of acceptance and intentional action that allows one to navigate even the most challenging situations with grace and strength. This provides a clear distinction between passive resignation and proactive engagement with reality, all whilst working with what is within your control. This is how the concept of living in accordance with nature creates the conditions for greater peace of mind and also for more effective action. Now let's examine the concept of orchiosis, which refers to the understanding of our place in the larger world and also our role in the human community. It is about recognizing that we are all interconnected and that our actions have a ripple effect on the world around us. This awareness of our role in the greater whole helps to reduce self-centeredness, increases empathy, and strengthens our sense of purpose. When we see ourselves as separate from the world, we are often driven by selfish desires, and we can also contribute to unnecessary suffering. However, when we understand that we are part of a greater interconnected whole, our motivation shifts from personal gain to the well-being of the community. This is a profound transformation that not only improves our personal well-being, but also increases our ability to create a positive impact on the world. When we see that we are all part of one unified whole, our motivations are naturally transformed, and we seek to act in a manner that supports the common good. This can also expand our understanding of our sphere of influence, because when we become aware of how everything connects, we realize that we are capable of making a much larger positive impact than we previously imagined. This also brings a deeper sense of meaning, as we see that we are playing an important role in a much larger process. Let's consider a specific scenario where a person is solely focused on their own career advancement at the expense of others. This is a limited perspective, which is based on the assumption that the world is a collection of separate individuals. However, when that same person begins to see themselves as a part of a larger community, their motivations shift, and they start to think of how their actions impact the world around them. Their approach to their career changes as they move towards a model where success is shared with others. They are now driven by a desire to contribute positively to their community and not simply to climb the corporate ladder. This shift in perspective has a profound impact not only on their work, but also on their relationships and overall happiness. It is through this understanding of orchiosis that we see that our actions are never limited to ourselves, but are always connected to the whole. This sense of connection provides us with a deep source of meaning and purpose, and it expands our understanding of the world that we live in. When we are driven by the desire to contribute to something larger than ourselves, our lives are naturally enriched, and our actions are transformed. This is how orchiosis links to the earlier sections on values and purposeful action, as it shows how we can transform from acting solely for ourselves to working for the greater good. Now, let's explore how to use Stoic principles to create a clear and actionable framework for decision-making. So often, our choices are influenced by external pressures, emotional impulses, and the fear of not meeting expectations. However, a Stoic approach to decision-making emphasizes the use of reason, alignment with values, and a focus on what is within our control. This framework allows us to make better choices by focusing on what truly matters and by reducing the impact of external factors on our choices. This method provides a clear path to move forward with confidence and to also reduce reactivity. This provides a structured approach to making choices that are in line with our values. To begin, when you are faced with a decision, start by defining the situation clearly and then identifying your personal values that are relevant to the choice. Then ask yourself, what are the possible outcomes of this choice? And which of these outcomes is most in line with my values? For each possible outcome, also ask, what is within my control and what is outside of my control? For example, let's consider a situation where someone is faced with two job offers, one with a higher salary but long hours, and one with a lower salary but more fulfilling work. In this situation, it is important to identify the relevant values, such as financial security, work-life balance, contribution, and personal growth. By weighing the potential impact of each decision against these values, a clear choice will naturally emerge. You should then focus your attention on what you can control and accept what you cannot. You can't control which job you are offered, and you cannot control external circumstances. What you can control is your decision and your actions that follow. If you choose the job with lower pay but more purpose, you also then commit to managing your finances in a responsible way. This is how we move from a place of emotional reactivity to a place of intentional action. This is not about finding a perfect answer, but instead about making the best choice that is in alignment with your chosen values. This is also an ongoing process, as each new decision must be evaluated using these same principles. Let's transition into a discussion of how Stoic principles can be applied to navigate common modern challenges, beginning with the complexities of relationship conflicts. So often, disagreements and misunderstandings can lead to intense emotional reactions, leaving us feeling frustrated and disconnected. However, by using the Stoic tools, like the dichotomy of control and cognitive reframing, we can navigate relationship conflicts with greater clarity, empathy, and understanding. The goal is not to avoid conflict, but instead to move towards it from a place of reason and not emotion, which creates the space for more effective and productive communication. When we understand that we cannot control the actions or opinions of others, we are more able to manage our own reactions and create the conditions for a more harmonious interaction. Let's examine a scenario of a couple that are engaged in an argument. One partner might feel that they are not being heard or understood. Using the dichotomy of control, they can recognize that they cannot control their partner's opinions or behaviors, but they can control their own responses. Instead of reacting with defensiveness or anger, they can choose to pause, take a breath, and then focus on calmly explaining their point of view. They can also use cognitive reframing to challenge their own thoughts and to consider that their partner is not intentionally trying to hurt them. They are, in fact, often caught up in their own emotional responses to the conflict. When both parties in the conflict use these techniques, a space is created for more productive and honest communication. By focusing on your own responses, rather than on trying to control your partner, you are shifting the dynamic of the interaction and also creating the space for mutual understanding. This is a powerful message that reminds us that we are only in control of our own actions, and that this is where our true power resides. Now, let's turn our attention to workplace stress, which is a widespread issue that can have a significant negative impact on our lives. Stoic principles provide clear and actionable methods to manage stress, to deal with deadlines, and to navigate challenging work environments. These methods are not about avoiding stress, but instead, they are designed to help us manage it more effectively by focusing on what we can control and by acting with intention and purpose. This is about aligning your actions with your values, even when facing difficulties. This creates a mindset that will be resilient regardless of external circumstances. Imagine an individual who is facing a stressful deadline and is also dealing with a difficult colleague. In this situation, they can use Stoic acceptance to acknowledge that stress is a natural part of life and that deadlines are often unavoidable. They cannot control the behavior of their colleague, and they cannot control the external pressures. However, they can choose to focus on what they can control: their own actions, their own responses, their work habits, their time management, and their levels of self-care. They might make the choice to plan their work effectively, to prioritize their tasks, and to communicate clearly with their colleagues. They might also choose to take breaks, to eat healthy foods, and to practice mindfulness, which will help them to better manage their emotions. This highlights that these techniques are not meant to eliminate stress, but to reduce its overall impact by focusing on what is in our control. We must understand that stress is part of life, and what we can control is our ability to manage it and to move through it with purpose and grace. This also means making an active choice to not become emotionally reactive, which allows you to use reason as your primary guide. Now let's explore how Stoic philosophy can guide our responses to social injustice. It is common to feel a sense of anger and despair when we witness social injustices, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problems. However, Stoic principles provide a clear path to move towards effective action without succumbing to negative emotions. The key is to channel your anger into meaningful action based on your values and to focus on what you can do to contribute towards a more just world. This is not a justification for apathy or for inaction, but rather it's a method of channeling negative emotions into productive action. It is about acting with intention and not with uncontrolled reactivity. Imagine a situation where you witness a clear injustice occurring in your community. The Stoic perspective encourages you to accept the reality of this injustice and to not allow it to completely overwhelm you with anger or despair. You also acknowledge that the actions of others and the external circumstances are outside of your control. However, you choose to act based on your values of justice, compassion, and equality, and you then channel your energy into effective forms of action. You might choose to volunteer for a relevant organization, you might engage in political activism, or you might choose to educate others on the issues. This approach is not driven by anger, but instead by a desire to create positive change. This is the true power of not giving a FCK, as it allows you to choose where you direct your energy, instead of simply reacting to every situation that might create a negative emotional response. This is a response that is based on intention and purpose, and not based on reactivity or emotional impulse. Finally, let's discuss how Stoicism can help us to manage setbacks and failures, which are an unavoidable part of the human experience. Instead of seeing them as a cause of suffering, we can reframe them as opportunities for growth, self-reflection, and increased learning. This is a fundamental shift in perspective, which transforms how we view our mistakes and setbacks, and allows us to move forward with greater resilience and self-compassion. The Stoic perspective reminds us that setbacks are not personal, but they are an essential part of the journey, and that we can learn to make our mistakes work for us, rather than against us. Consider a scenario where someone has experienced a personal failure, such as not achieving a specific goal. Instead of reacting with self-criticism or despair, they can use the tools of Stoicism to reframe this experience as a valuable learning opportunity. They can pause and reflect on their actions, assess what they could have done better, and then use this information to make a more informed decision moving forward. They might use this opportunity to adjust their approach, to develop new skills, and to refine their overall strategy. This approach emphasizes self-compassion and not self-condemnation. It also reinforces that setbacks are an inherent aspect of the growth process, and that every mistake is also an opportunity to move forward with greater clarity and purpose. It allows you to transform something that might cause suffering into a tool for increased learning and greater self-awareness. And so, as we move towards the conclusion of our exploration, it is important to acknowledge that Stoicism is not a practice to be done in isolation. The Stoics understood that we are social creatures and that we benefit greatly from shared wisdom and a sense of community. This is not only about receiving support, but also about contributing to the collective learning and growth of all. By sharing our experiences, learning from others, and contributing to a community of like-minded individuals, we reinforce the value of the practice and also accelerate our own growth. This is where we arrive at the core idea that is often missed, that Stoicism is not designed to be a solitary pursuit, and that we are designed to learn from others and to share our own experiences. There is a deep value in this idea, as it allows us to not only support those that are new to the path, but also to grow faster and to more deeply integrate these lessons. This is what brings us to the idea of the power of shared wisdom and how it will enhance your own journey towards self-mastery and also create a greater sense of connection and purpose. And this is why it is so important to understand that this is also not about giving up our individuality, but instead, it is about learning to exist within a community and understanding that we are not alone on this path. Now, let us transition towards the final section of our journey, where we will explore the importance of community in Stoicism. It is through this lens that you will fully understand the meaning of not giving a FCK, and also how to implement this philosophy into your own life with greater intentionality, awareness, and also with the support of a community. Let's now delve deeper into the practical application of Stoic principles and begin with the concept of the reserve clause, or hyphasis, a powerful tool for navigating the uncertainties of life. This practice encourages us to mentally append, with the exception of qualification to all of our goals and desires, thereby acknowledging that external outcomes are ultimately outside of our control. This isn't about lowering our expectations or reducing our ambition, but rather, it's about cultivating a deeper acceptance of reality and reducing our emotional attachment to specific results. By embracing this mental flexibility, we enhance our resilience in the face of setbacks and also increase our capacity for effective action. This method is rooted directly in the Stoic understanding of the dichotomy of control and underscores the importance of focusing on the process rather than solely on the results. When we grasp that our efforts are within our influence, but the outcomes are not, we are able to approach all situations with a greater sense of equanimity and intentionality. This is not an excuse for apathy, but instead, it is a foundation for purposeful living, because when we free ourselves from the tyranny of rigid expectations, our energy and focus are then directed toward more effective action. For example, imagine someone starting a new business with the goal of achieving a specific level of revenue within the first year. Instead of attaching their sense of self-worth to that specific outcome, the Stoic practice of the reserve clause would encourage them to adopt the mindset of "I will do the best possible job," with the exception of hitting that revenue goal. This small mental shift acknowledges that factors beyond their control, such as market conditions, may impact the results, and it frees them from the anxiety of trying to control something that is fundamentally uncontrollable. By accepting the possibility of not achieving that specific outcome, they reduce the negative emotional impact of unwanted results, and they also free their focus, allowing for the effective management of the factors that they can control. They can then focus on effective marketing, good customer service, and product development, which are actions that will still move them towards success, even if the end result differs from their original goal. This allows them to maintain a positive and proactive mindset, regardless of the final outcome. This is a powerful practice that allows us to focus our attention and energy on what we can control, which increases our effectiveness and also our well-being. When we adopt the mindset of "with the exception of," we are better able to navigate the complexities and uncertainties of life with resilience and grace. Building on this, let's turn to the Stoic ideal of inner tranquility, known as ataraxia, which is often misunderstood as emotionless detachment. This state is not about suppressing our feelings, but instead, it is about cultivating emotional stability and inner peace through consistent self-awareness and the practice of virtue. It is a state of emotional regulation that is achieved through a deep understanding of our own inner world, and also through a conscious choice to align with our values. The practice of mindfulness and emotional evaluation from the previous section become essential tools in our ability to navigate our inner world, creating the conditions for greater stability and reduced emotional reactivity. This is not a passive process of waiting for a state of calm to arrive, but instead, it is an active practice which requires consistent effort and also a commitment to self-improvement. This is an internal process that we are fully in charge of, and so it also reinforces the Stoic concept of what is within our control. When we realize that our inner state is a matter of choice, we are better able to navigate any situation that life presents to us without being overwhelmed by negative emotions. For a practical application of this idea, let's guide you through a simple meditation exercise that combines breath awareness with the Stoic practice of acceptance. Find a quiet place, close your eyes, and become aware of your breath. Notice the rise and fall of your chest, and allow your mind to become present in this moment. Now, as you breathe, bring to mind any situations that might be causing you stress or anxiety. Acknowledge these feelings, but do not become consumed by them. Remind yourself that these feelings are temporary and that they do not define who you are. Now, as you continue to breathe, focus on the idea of acceptance, reminding yourself that you cannot control external events and that your goal is to focus on what is within your control, which is your own thoughts, actions, and judgments. This simple exercise, when done regularly, helps you to develop greater emotional resilience and to also cultivate a sense of inner peace. It provides a clear example of the difference between emotional suppression, which is unhealthy and destructive, and emotional regulation, which empowers you to navigate any situation with grace and strength. This is not a quick fix, but it is a foundational practice that leads to consistent and measurable progress. Now, let's explore the Stoic understanding of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living well, but which is not a state of mere happiness, but instead, it is a state of living in accordance with virtue and reason. It's a life filled with meaning and purpose, derived from our chosen values and our conscious actions. This concept redefines the notion of a fulfilling life, moving beyond the shallow pursuit of pleasure, and instead, directing our attention toward the development of character. Eudaimonia is not about feeling good, but about being good and also contributing to the world in a way that aligns with our deepest values. This provides a powerful and transformative understanding of the concept of purpose and how it relates to our overall well-being. The pursuit of external achievements and validations can often lead to emptiness, but when we strive to live in accordance with virtue, we find that emotional balance and a sense of inner peace are natural byproducts of this chosen path. Consider an athlete who has achieved remarkable external success, winning medals and accolades, but yet they still find themselves feeling empty and unfulfilled. This is often the result of chasing external validation as the source of their happiness. Now, contrast that with a person who leads a virtuous life, working with purpose, and also treating everyone with kindness and compassion, even though they may not have attained great external wealth or fame. This person has found true eudaimonia because they are living in alignment with their core values. This reinforces the powerful idea that true fulfillment comes from within and not from external achievements. This is a very important distinction because it highlights that the pursuit of external rewards is often a trap and that the real goal is inner virtue and purpose-driven action. When we pursue external validation, we are always chasing something outside of ourselves, which creates a cycle of dissatisfaction. However, when we seek to live a life of virtue and purpose, we are connecting to something deeper and also creating the conditions for authentic and lasting fulfillment. This is also a reminder that true success is not measured by what we achieve, but by who we become. Finally, let's examine the Stoic concept of proherses, which is the power of intentional choice, and how this is the very core of the not giving a FCK philosophy. Proherses is the ability to make conscious decisions based on our reason and values, and it is this ability that distinguishes us as rational beings. By embracing this understanding, we realize that we are not slaves to our impulses, and that we have the power to shape our reactions and to choose our actions with intention. This understanding of the power of choice is the key to the not giving a FCK mindset, because it allows us to choose where we focus our energy, rather than simply reacting to every situation that might arise. When we acknowledge the power of proherses, we are able to live a more purposeful and authentic life, guided by our values and intentions. This is not a passive approach, but rather it is an active choice that empowers us to direct our lives according to our own design. Consider someone who has developed the habit of overreacting to stressful situations. They might find themselves becoming angry or anxious in response to the smallest challenges. However, with an understanding of proherses, they can choose to change their habitual responses and to begin acting in alignment with their chosen values. They can consciously choose to pause, to evaluate the situation, and to respond with reason and intention, rather than with an automatic emotional response. This is a conscious and intentional choice that requires practice and commitment, but it is also the path towards self-mastery and a more authentic way of living. This then also ties directly to the idea of not giving a FCK, as it is about consciously choosing where you direct your energy based on your selected values. This means choosing to not react emotionally to situations that are not important, so that you have more time and energy to devote to those that are in alignment with your purpose. This practice empowers you to become an active agent in your own life, and also to choose your destiny. And so, armed with these deeper understandings of core Stoic concepts, we can now focus on self-transformation through Stoicism, beginning with the practice of breaking free from external dependencies. The Stoic path towards freedom is not found in the pursuit of wealth, fame, or any other external validation, but instead, it is found through inner self-mastery, by reducing our attachments to external factors and by focusing on what is within our control. This does not mean giving up on external goals, but rather, it means reducing our emotional reliance on these external outcomes. True freedom comes when we are no longer slaves to the demands of the external world, and when we find our sense of well-being from our chosen values and our intentional actions. This is also a direct connection to the not giving a FCK philosophy, because when we are no longer focused on external approval, we become more able to live our lives in alignment with our chosen purpose. This creates the conditions for greater independence and peace of mind. Let's examine a situation where someone is completely obsessed with gaining wealth and status. They may find themselves constantly comparing themselves to others, chasing after the next promotion, and feeling anxious about their financial security. This obsession is a trap that is fueled by external dependencies, and it will lead to a state of constant anxiety and dissatisfaction because the sources of their well-being are outside of their control. Now, let's compare this to a person who has reduced their reliance on external factors and who is now focused on inner self-mastery, virtue, and their chosen purpose. They might still have goals of financial success, but they are no longer dependent on these external factors for their happiness or well-being. This person is more likely to be productive, effective, and peaceful, because their energy is no longer wasted on chasing external rewards, but is now focused on internal growth and chosen actions. This also highlights how these dependencies cause suffering, and that the best way to reduce the impact of these dependencies is to become more self-aware and to consciously choose to not depend on external validation or results. We must always remember that true freedom is a state of mind, and that we must claim our freedom from these external demands. Building upon this, let's look at how Stoicism provides a practical path towards cultivating inner resilience. This is not about avoiding hardship, but rather about developing the strength, the composure, and the intentionality to face difficulties with grace and virtue. Stoicism is not a method of avoiding the challenges of life, but instead, it is a framework for transforming these challenges into tools for self-improvement. This aligns directly with the not giving a FCK philosophy, because when we learn to approach difficulties with a calm and intentional approach, we also begin to remove their power over us. This is a process of building emotional and mental fortitude that allows us to grow regardless of external circumstances. Resilience is not the absence of negative emotions, but it is the ability to move forward even when these emotions are present. Let's examine a scenario where someone has recently experienced the death of a loved one. This is an incredibly difficult experience that can often lead to feelings of grief, despair, and hopelessness. From a Stoic perspective, it is important to acknowledge these feelings, but it is also important to choose to not be completely overwhelmed by them. We also acknowledge that the death of a loved one is outside of our control, but we can control how we choose to respond to this tragedy. We can choose to honor the memory of the lost person and to find ways to continue living our own lives with meaning and purpose. This means choosing self-compassion, focusing on the present moment, and taking action that is in alignment with your values. This does not mean that we should ignore our negative feelings, but rather that we should integrate them into a larger understanding of reality, which allows us to move forward with resilience and strength. This also highlights that strength is not the absence of negative emotions, but it is the ability to continue on our path, even when they are present. Now let's examine how Stoicism helps us transform negative emotions by viewing them as data points and by using reason and self-awareness to convert them into positive action and personal growth. This is not about suppressing these emotions, but rather about understanding their source and about using them to guide us towards greater self-understanding. These emotions are not the enemy, but instead they are indicators that can help us refine our chosen path. When we begin to see that we can use our negative feelings as indicators, they lose their negative charge and become powerful tools for growth. This transformation also connects directly to the ideas from the previous sections on emotional awareness and cognitive reframing, as these form the foundation for this approach. This highlights that negative emotions are not inherently bad, but that they are an opportunity to explore our inner landscape and to adjust our actions to more effectively navigate the world. Consider a situation where a person feels anger as a response to injustice. Instead of allowing that anger to turn into destructive rage, they can use the tools of Stoicism to transform that anger into positive action. They might choose to use that anger as motivation to fight for justice, to advocate for change, or to help others who have been victimized. They also understand that this anger has a root, and they might use it to better understand themselves, and also why this particular situation has triggered this specific emotion. This process of inner examination and purposeful action is how we transform negative emotions into a force for good. It allows us to move from a place of reactivity to a place of intentional action, and also to learn to utilize all parts of our inner landscape. This means transforming emotions that might be negative or destructive into tools for self-improvement. This also expands the viewer's understanding of the value of their own emotional responses and how they can transform those experiences into opportunities for growth. Finally, let's explore how Stoicism can guide us to embrace a life of purpose and virtue, and how the not giving a FCK mindset is the key to achieving this goal. This is not about living an ascetic life, but rather about focusing on what matters most, and about letting go of all the things that do not serve a positive purpose. This concept ties all of the previous techniques into a cohesive whole, and emphasizes that they are all designed to help us on the path towards a meaningful existence. When we prioritize virtue and live in alignment with our purpose, we naturally find a greater sense of fulfillment and also a deeper connection to something larger than ourselves. The not giving a FCK philosophy is not about apathy, but rather about a conscious choice to not waste our energy on trivial matters, so that we have more available to devote to activities and goals that are in alignment with our chosen purpose. Let's revisit some of the concepts that we have covered, like value selection, purpose, and intentional action, and observe how they are all connected. By choosing our values intentionally, by finding our purpose, and by taking actions that are guided by reason, we create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling. The Stoic path is not a complicated or obscure philosophy, but instead, it is a practical method that will guide you on your path and provide a framework for how you should best use your energy and your time. It is designed to transform your perspective and also empower you to live a more meaningful, purposeful, and virtuous life. All the methods, techniques, and tools that we have discussed have been designed to guide you on that path, and the not giving a FCK philosophy is the key that allows you to move forward with greater intention and clarity. And so, we come to a point where we can begin to connect all of these various threads and create a cohesive framework from all of the different ideas. It's important to see that the core Stoic principles, such as the dichotomy of control, value alignment, acceptance, mindfulness, and intentional action, are all interconnected, and that they form a cohesive system for self-mastery and inner peace. These ideas all support each other, and they are designed to provide you with a unified framework that will transform your inner world and also your external actions. It's also important to note that these are not simply separate ideas, but they are different aspects of one singular approach. They are not intended to be practiced independently, but rather to be applied as part of a unified method for living. It is also essential to restate that not giving a FCK is not about apathy, but rather it is about consciously selecting where we focus our energy, aligning our actions with our chosen values, and liberating ourselves from the demands of the external world. It is a positive and active choice that is rooted in intention and purpose. By choosing to not be consumed by what does not matter, we make space for what does. This is how the previous ideas all connect to this core concept, forming a powerful and cohesive whole that allows you to live with a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. We now understand that this is not a passive approach, but a proactive, value-driven method that empowers us to direct our own lives. And so, we see that adopting a Stoic mindset is a journey towards a more authentic and meaningful existence that is rooted in virtue, purpose, and acceptance. It is a path towards becoming a more complete and integrated human being, and also an active agent in your own life. It's important to understand that this is not a set of rules, but rather a framework that empowers us to live our best possible life, guided by reason and in alignment with our values. This is not a quick fix, but rather a lifelong journey that will help you to find more meaning and purpose in every action, and to better navigate any situation. And finally, it's important to recognize that the timeless wisdom of Stoicism provides practical solutions to the problems that we face in the modern world. The challenges that we face today, such as stress, relationship conflicts, social injustice, and the fear of failure, are all problems that were addressed by Stoic philosophers thousands of years ago, and that the solutions remain as relevant today as they were then. The problems that we face may appear in a modern context, but the core challenges are the same, and the core Stoic concepts provide the best framework for navigating the challenges that arise in all areas of life. This means that these ancient ideas are not merely an academic exploration, but instead, they are a practical guide to living a more effective and fulfilling life in the here and now. And so, we have now arrived at a place where we can prepare for a final transformation in your understanding of not giving a FCK. There is one final insight that will take you to a new level of understanding, and that will synthesize everything that we have previously discussed. This understanding will be the key to unlocking the full potential of the Stoic mindset, and it will give you a new perspective on your own inner world, and also your place in the world that we all inhabit. You are now prepared for a final revelation that will transform your perspective. The upcoming final section will provide you with a clear call to action and a roadmap for beginning your journey towards a more intentional, virtuous, and meaningful life. It is not enough to simply understand these ideas, but instead, it is important to take action and to begin to apply them to your own life. This final section will inspire you to become an active participant in your own transformation. The goal is to show you a clear path to move forward with purpose, meaning, and intention. Let us also reiterate that the power to transform your life comes from your own conscious choices, and that the tools and techniques that we have discussed are a method for making those choices more effective and more aligned with your chosen values. We are the active agents of our own lives, and it is through intention and purposeful action that we have the power to change our destiny. This is a call to action, a call to personal responsibility, and it is a declaration that you are in charge of your own journey. And so, we end this section with a sense of anticipation, and with a promise of a final message that will transform your understanding of reality, and will empower you to move forward with purpose, with meaning, and with a deep understanding of what it means to live a life that is aligned with your deepest values. The core essence of the Stoic philosophy is about to be revealed, and it is here that all of these pieces will come together, forming a cohesive whole and a powerful message of liberation that will guide you on your journey. And so, we arrive at the ultimate revelation. The Stoic art of not giving a FCK, which is not a passive act of indifference, but rather the deliberate choice to direct our attention, energy, and emotional investment toward our carefully selected values, based on a clear understanding of what is and what is not within our sphere of influence. This is a powerful tool for personal freedom, meaningful engagement, and focused action, all of which stem from a deep understanding of the dichotomy of control and the importance of aligning our actions with virtue. This is not a form of apathy, nor is it a method of withdrawing from the world, but instead it is an active choice to focus on the things that truly matter, so that we can become more effective agents in our own lives and also contribute in a meaningful way to our communities. It is also rooted in a deep understanding of the nature of reality and an acceptance of the limits of our influence. This is the final culmination of the core ideas that have been presented so far, and all are essential to a complete understanding of the Stoic path. This concept is not designed to limit us, but instead to empower us to live with more intention, purpose, and freedom. This is the final resolution of the core idea of the video, and it provides the framework for a more meaningful and fulfilling existence. By understanding this concept, we can finally resolve the pattern of duality that has been running throughout this entire discussion, between internal and external, control and influence, perception and reality, and reactive versus purposeful, highlighting that true power lies in making conscious choices regarding our inner world. The dichotomy of control, which we have explored in great depth, becomes the ultimate example of how we can choose where we focus our attention, energy, and emotions. We now understand that by recognizing what we can and cannot control, we can then begin to actively select our focus and actions, thus avoiding the trap of reacting emotionally to external situations, and instead choosing our actions with intention. The power of this understanding lies in its ability to transform our perception of reality. When we finally recognize that our inner world is the primary area of our influence, we also unlock a level of personal agency that transcends all external circumstances. This pattern of duality, once understood, can become the source of great freedom. By choosing where to direct our energy, we also choose what we become. This is not simply an abstract idea, but a very real and tangible tool for change, growth, and freedom. This idea emphasizes that our choice of where to direct our attention is the most powerful tool that we possess, and that all of our actions should stem from this core understanding. And so, we return to the initial question that was posed at the beginning of this journey. Are our default reactions to life's challenges truly helpful, and are they in alignment with our chosen values? By adopting the Stoic mindset, we can transform those reactions from sources of suffering into tools for personal growth, resilience, and inner peace. This is how we tie all of these threads together, and also to demonstrate the practical power of these ideas. The art of not giving a FCK is the key to unlocking freedom from unwanted reactivity, and also to engaging with the world from a place of strength, wisdom, and intentionality. This is not a passive process of waiting for clarity, but instead, an active method that requires consistent vigilance and effort. The Stoic approach transforms our habitual patterns of reaction into intentional responses that are based on our deeply held values. This transforms our experience of reality, allowing us to navigate the complexities of life with greater awareness and control. This provides a very clear and direct answer to the initial question, and it shows that the Stoic framework is the most effective method for navigating life's inevitable challenges. Ultimately, adopting a Stoic mindset shifts our perspective, empowering us to become more conscious, intentional, and active agents in our own lives. This is not merely about managing our emotions, but instead, it's about a radical reorientation of our inner world and how that reflects on all areas of our lives. We begin to see the world with new eyes, no longer a passive observer, but an active creator of our own reality. This is a shift of enormous importance because it highlights the degree to which our inner state is our responsibility, and also the power that we have to create a life that is both meaningful and purposeful. This is not simply a philosophy for managing challenges, but a path towards a life of profound meaning, value, and purpose. This understanding highlights the importance of self-awareness, intention, and the power of our chosen values, creating the foundation for a more authentic and empowered existence. The power to transform our lives comes from within, and Stoicism is a powerful tool that empowers us to unlock that power by providing us with the clarity, intention, and discipline required to move forward with more freedom and awareness. Stoicism is not simply an abstract or outdated philosophy, but a practical and relevant guide that will empower you to navigate modern challenges more effectively. From relationship issues and career stress to dealing with social injustices and the day-to-day difficulties of modern life, the core principles of Stoicism and its accompanying techniques are designed to provide a framework for effective action and also to minimize the impact of unwanted negative emotions. This is not simply a historical set of rules, but a valuable and practical tool that can help us navigate the modern world with more clarity, intention, and purpose. The core message of this approach is to empower the viewer and to give them a set of tools that will help them to respond to the difficulties of daily life from a place of greater strength and wisdom. This demonstrates that Stoicism is a powerful tool for navigating life's difficulties and also for creating a life that is meaningful and fulfilling. And so, meaning is not something that we passively discover in the external world, but is something that we create from within by aligning our actions with our chosen values and by pursuing a life of virtue. It is not found in external achievements or other people's approval, but rather, it is an internal state of being that emerges from purposeful action and also by connecting with something larger than ourselves. When we understand that meaning comes from within and from living in accordance with our chosen values, we create an inner source of meaning that can never be taken away from us. This provides a very clear understanding of how we are in charge of our experience of reality and that we are also the primary creators of our own level of fulfillment. This is an active and intentional process, and it is not something that we passively find, but instead, it is something that we create through the daily choices that we make. This transformative understanding gives us the freedom to define our own purpose based on internal values and not on the changing demands of the external world. The Stoic path is one of empowerment because it highlights that we all possess the ability to consciously choose how we interpret and respond to external events. We are not passive victims of circumstance, but instead, we are active agents in shaping our own destinies. This understanding of conscious choice is the key to unlocking a life of freedom from reactivity. Our ability to choose our actions and interpretations is a powerful tool that we all possess, and when we understand how to wield this power, we are also able to take ownership of our lives and direct them towards a more meaningful path. This is the power that lies at the very core of the not giving a FCK philosophy, as it is a method that empowers us to take ownership of all aspects of our lives. By becoming more aware of our choices, we are also more empowered to create the future that we desire. The true goal of Stoicism is to cultivate inner freedom, a state of independence from external control, and also a capacity to live according to our chosen values, without the constant pressure of external demands. This is not a state of perfect detachment, but rather a continuous process of growth, learning, and self-discovery. When we understand that true freedom comes from within, and not from our external circumstances, we become empowered to navigate the difficulties of our daily lives with greater peace and satisfaction. We also understand that this is not a destination, but a journey, a path towards greater awareness and greater freedom from external influence. The goal is not perfection, but continuous progress in the direction of wholeness, integration, and also greater self-mastery. And so, we come to the final resolution of this discussion, by understanding that the idea of not giving a FCK, from a Stoic perspective, is an intentional choice to live a life aligned with virtue, purpose, and acceptance, and to actively engage with the present moment, while being indifferent to those things that do not serve a constructive purpose. This understanding finally completes this long and winding journey, and it also reinforces the core message of all the concepts that we have explored. This is not a passive approach, but a powerful and transformative method for living that requires constant effort, self-awareness, and a clear understanding of our chosen values. This process involves conscious effort and a deep understanding of the core principles, all of which have been explored in great detail and are now brought together to form a cohesive whole. We can now see that the pattern of duality between the external and internal reveals that the key to inner peace and freedom is not found in controlling external circumstances, but rather in managing our inner state. Our thoughts, our judgments, and our chosen values are the only areas where we have true influence, and so it is within this inner space that we must focus our attention, and from where we must create all of the changes that we desire to see in our lives. This returns us to the core structure of the ideas that were set up at the beginning of our discussion, and provides a clear understanding of how all of these ideas connect. The path towards a meaningful life requires us to shift our attention from the external to the internal, and it also requires us to take full responsibility for our chosen actions. The power to transform our lives begins from the inner space, and this is the primary area that we must always direct our attention. And so, we finally return to the initial challenge that we faced, and it is now clear that the Stoic principles are the most effective way to transform our reactivity into intentional action, and to create a clear path towards greater resilience, peace, and fulfillment. This is how all of the ideas connect, and also how we find a resolution to the core problem that we initially explored. It is now clear that the Stoic path is the most direct method towards a life of virtue, purpose, and peace, and also the most practical method for navigating life's complexities. This answers the core question posed by this discussion and shows that the not giving a FCK mindset is not apathy, but a path towards liberation from unwanted reactivity. By applying these methods, we can all create a life that is more aligned with our values. And so, we have arrived at a place where we can experience resolution and clarity, leaving us with a clear path forward and a deep understanding of our potential for growth. This journey has been about self-discovery, personal responsibility, and also the power of our own choices. Even though there will be challenges along the way, the practice of Stoicism will guide us towards a life of meaning, purpose, and satisfaction, and this is the final message that we want to leave you with. This is not a quick fix, but rather a lifelong journey of self-improvement, and also the path towards greater levels of wisdom and understanding. This is the final resolution, and we leave you with the understanding that this journey is well worth pursuing. Now, as we reach the end of this exploration, let's consider what further questions arise. How can Stoic principles be applied to your specific relationships? How can they help you navigate your career and your goals? How can they help you become a better and more effective member of your community? These are the questions that you must ask yourself and use as a guide to further your own self-discovery. This is designed to plant the seeds for continued growth, and also to reinforce that this is a journey and not a destination. These are not simply abstract ideas, but but are practical methods that you can apply to every area of your life. These questions are designed to guide you on that path of continued exploration. The long-term implications of embracing Stoicism are significant. Imagine a life where you are not driven by external pressures, but by your own carefully chosen values. Imagine a world where you are not a victim of your emotions, but the active manager of your inner state. Imagine the positive impact that you can make in the lives of others when you are grounded in virtue, purpose, and meaning. This is the potential that lies within the Stoic path, and this is also what we encourage you to embrace. The path that we have discussed will transform your experience of reality and will also create a more meaningful and fulfilling existence. This is more than just a change in how you perceive the world. It is a radical shift in your way of being. And now, we encourage you to share your experiences, ask questions, and connect with others who are also exploring the path of Stoicism. By building a community and by sharing your experiences, we create a space for shared learning and mutual support. The journey of self-discovery is not meant to be traveled alone, and by joining with others, we create a stronger foundation for our own personal growth. This is a journey of shared discovery, and we encourage you to take the next steps to connect with your fellow travelers. By creating a community, we all become stronger, and we all progress more rapidly towards our goals. Finally, we call you to continue practicing the core principles of Stoicism on a daily basis, and to approach life with intention, purpose, and acceptance. Remember that this is a journey and not a destination, and that small, consistent steps will yield the best results. We encourage you to be patient with yourself and to celebrate the progress that you make along the way. This is the path towards a more meaningful, purposeful, and virtuous life, and it is now your responsibility to walk that path with intention, integrity, and also with a deep sense of personal responsibility. This is not the end of the journey, but rather the beginning of a new path that we encourage you to explore with curiosity, courage, and also with a deep sense of commitment to your own personal growth.